at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Yeah, welcome everybody to our daily. I'm getting used to the new paid duck, so that ended abruptly. I have to get some new intro videos made now that I know how I can use them up in the duck. Anyway, we welcome to our daily gun show. We come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for about an hour. It is, well, actually, it's more like an average about 2 hours probably on the 1,200 episodes. So we're on episode 1243. Which is 1,200 episodes in. We started this back in 2016, and we've been live pretty much every weeknight since. And I've got a couple of things we can chat about tonight. The format lately has been sending out the links and having people join in. And of course, we have all kinds of stuff been going on lately. And then we also have Christmas coming up here. So today we're recording this on December 23rd of 2020. And to say the format has changed over the years, literally, but over the 3rd of 2020, over time. So right now, as I'm typing and talking and being distracted right now in the description of the video, I've been using that as a place to keep notes and videos that I've watched, videos that are of interest or that are relevant. I've been putting into notes. That way, a couple of things get accomplished. I can talk about them here at the beginning of the show, when typically the alerts go out and the mechanism of YouTube takes some time to let people know the show is going. And since for some reason the show doesn't always start right at the dot of midnight every night, not everyone's expected to be sitting there right at midnight. So I think this works out pretty well. So I post some stuff in here, and we can chat about that at the beginning of the show, and we'll see if people are going to jump in tonight. So let's see. We'll start out with, of course, the big news would be the ATF withdrew the request or the comment. The request for comments, period. Like it just ended that comment period and withdrew whatever that means. So there's a little bit of concern or debate out there on what that means. We have the official notice, which was very brief. Let's see, I guess I can screen share using the technology of the day. And we'll click this button and then this button. Now here, don't be alarmed. If you have any children watching, this is my monitor, and it's wider than regular people's monitor. So that's just a thing that happens. If you can still hear, though, this over here is the text chat. So this is a conversation, not a television show, not a radio show. It's not a magazine. We're using computers on an internet, and that's better than other things. Even though it's not explicitly in the Constitution, we have the freedom to use this thing. And if you're not using it, then you're being used. Oh, snap. Is that a thing? That should be a thing. But, we encourage you here to be part of the conversation and not just an observer, because other people are out there putting out programming for observers. That's not my objective here. To provide a place for us to evolve the conversation. And tonight, we're going to evolve the conversation about Second Amendment, right? So looking at the first thing here was the actual announcement, which I think I opened this whole thing up. Oh, actually, that's not what I was thinking about. The thing I was thinking about was just a little short thing. I don't know, must be what you click on to get to it. But this was still pretty brief. The official thing on a PDF comes out to be 2 pages, and just starts at the top saying Department of Justice, Bureau of Tobacco and Alcohol, whatever, the ATF, the docket number, and then all the technical titling and stuff. Basically comes down to action, notice, semicolon, withdrawal. And that's it, like not even a sentence. And then it just says summary of the BATF announced the withdrawal for comments entitled blah, blah, blah. And that's it, just says it's withdrawn. So I guess some people aren't satisfied with that, and they're saying, what does that mean? Of course, we don't know. So you can either enjoy Christmas or worry about what might be. Right? I don't think anybody can call Martin G. Richardson, the Associate Deputy Director, because I doubt he's taking phone calls on it. Let's see. Then we got CloverTac did a video. He had to exploit it. He had to jump on it. My Mad Dragon take credit for it right away. I had a couple of people on. They chatted a bit. It was good. More of an after action, I'd say, than a celebration, which was pretty awesome. Then we got the Daily Bullet. Went out earlier today. Had Rhonda Ezell on. Who, hey everyone, this was actually yesterday. But I definitely wanted to include it since it got blown off yesterday with all the hype. Everybody was trying to capitalize and make money on the whole situation with the braces. But I didn't want to overlook this. Rhonda's awesome. I've met her briefly because she hangs out at the stuff I hang out at, the gun rights policy conference and stuff like that. And in the places where I hang out at places like SHOT Show and stuff, right? So, I guess not really SHOT Show, but the 2A rally. But it's not like we're friends or nothing. But I have a lot of respect for her. She's just a regular chick that basically once McDonald case, at the time, that allowed the entire country to, McDonald allowed or stopped the restriction on the Second Amendment at state level or something. So basically it opened up so that she could go seek out, learn how to shoot, and then a CCW, and found out that in Chicago you couldn't because there was a city ordinance banning it. So just like anything else, you had to take it up through the thing. And she talked to the Illinois State Rifle Association, and then, they usually, I don't know what the procedure is. You listen to somebody do an interview, they'll say they think they take, a bunch of different candidates who might be applicable for a court case, and they'll either start the court cases and see which ones last, or I don't know what they do to figure out which ones are going to do it. But anyway, she must have been in one of those situations. So anyway, her case is the one that successfully went through and challenged the city of Chicago. And then on top of that, she had to go back, 7 years later and do it again. So she's done the work a couple of times. And then on top of all that, I'm a big fan that her and the people that did that took the information about why and how they did it, and then the step-by-step so that people would have, I guess you could say, directions, but basically some inspiration and some awareness of the steps that they took. The applicable steps might be different other places, but had a chance to see what they did instead of just doing it, talking about it, or doing it and going back to doing something else. I mean, you got the right to do whatever you want. I just think what she chose, the path she chose, is pretty cool. And she hangs out, like say, when I've had a chance to chat with her, it's been at the table Chicago Guns Matter, which is the organization that talks about what happened and then offers information for people in Illinois, and then of course Chicago, where they have all kinds of crazy laws that you'd have to navigate. So just a cool advocate, boots on the ground, grassroots, whatever you want to call it. So definitely don't want to bypass that one. And it was, the daily bullets are what they are. They're 15 minutes long, and Paul doesn't spend much time. He just basically starts it off and lets them go, very much like James Cleeta used to do. So I think they're, as efficient as you can get for a nice insight, and then sometimes awareness, I guess, depending on who it is. Speaking of that, I'm going to jump down to Ryan Shotgun with Charlie came out, and I don't know who this guy is. So it was an interesting conversation for half an hour. I don't even think the guy really even said who he was. He just sort of said he did some kind of contracting job or maybe teaching job that made him travel. Anyway, it was an interesting conversation down in Atlanta. That one dropped this morning. And those are recorded shows, so you can't expect them to come out and either be preempted or be focused on, hype of the day, or in this case, an attack that the ATF threw at us. So it was sort of a break, nice refresh to have something different, knowing especially that it's not somebody who's just oblivious, like they got up that morning and said, oh, I think I'll just talk to somebody completely different, or intentionally trying to calm everybody's jets, or for some reason divert or distract. None of that. It's just that these regularly scheduled stuff are coming out. So good palate cleansers when pretty much everything, unfortunately, kind of was focused to pistol brace stuff. Oh, you know what? I'm going to throw something else in here. I should probably click a different button if I'm going to cough. I walked into Match Chat one time and they were all just watching his empty chair. So this is way better than that. So don't act like it's not as bad as Matt's empty chair or nothing. Yankee used to pull that crap. But Yankee would do it in a room full of people. We'd have 10 people in the hangout, and Yankee would book and get credit for being in there, get paid. But then his chair, just his chair, literally, just his chair. And that was a big thing. Bob knows. There's Bob. Bob knows all about it because he remembers Yankee's chair being a thing. Well, now Matt's copying off of it. I would have flipped my guts if somebody would have super chatted his chair, because I was like, oh crap. It was like 25 minutes of his chair. Not that I sat there watching it, but other people were sitting there watching it, and I watched them watch it. But anyway, so where are we at? I jumped all over the place to get to Ryan Shotgun with Charlie. We're back up to Daily Bullet. So next we get to a couple of Waltz, Waltz Woke. So watching his stuff is pretty interesting. This one, Voluntary Measures. See, there's jargon and fancy talk that they either say in cities or people that shoot 9mm. I don't know. I can't keep track of everything. Right? I don't speak all languages. I don't speak city. So Walt says all this stuff in his fancy city learning talk, and that's how I learn stuff. So this one was one of those kind of videos. Taking the whole woke thing. Well, the woke is a way to describe taking the whole voluntary measures and cramming that back at them. Very, very good. We'll get into that if this chat keeps going today. Then he had to think of the children, part of a series he's doing on debunking gun control debates. Again, awesome. I wouldn't even be here right now. You'd be listening to Dead Air or Matt's empty chair, because I would have quit doing this if Walt wasn't out there attacking things, not just to a whole different audience and in a whole different way, but literally in valid, interesting, effective ways. I literally can't wait to see what these people do. All these other people, like Alan Gottlieb's fine. He's walking around with them weird ass leather shoes that old dudes wear that have like smooth leather bottoms. Like, I don't know what the hell the difference between that and my grandma's shoe is, but somehow they're a difference. But old dudes wear them weird ass shoes with flat leather bottoms. Like, I'm never going to have to do nothing that needs traction. I might as well be wearing moccasins or sandals. So just give me really expensive leather, worthless shoes, right? I mean, I don't know what the hell Alan wears, but that generation of dudes goes around wearing those kind of shoes, and they got stuff done. I mean, somehow in them weird ass, almost sandal leather shoes that cost too much, they kicked enough ass to get us where we are today. But then you get like, well, he's running around with them cleats, man. He's running around with them football players, just tearing up the grass and just catching in. So this is going to be different. This is not just more or not just again, right? This is different. And I'm not saying it's going to win, but it ain't more and it ain't just again. And that's something different. I haven't experienced that. All I've ever seen is again, really. I haven't seen more yet, and I haven't seen again. Well, I always see again. So anyway, their links are in there. Go watch them. None of them are long. I don't know, for whatever reason, Walt can't do a long video. Then there was SAF. Well, Alan Gottlieb was on the Florida show. So Florida Carry, I think, is now being run by SAF, Second Amendment Foundation or something. And they're paying a dude, or I don't know if they're paying him. They're probably paying him, but who cares? But Craig from California is doing the podcast for Florida for Second Amendment Foundation in Washington. And if that ain't effed up, then what the hell? There's nobody in Florida that can just volunteer some time or get paid to do that. I mean, Craig's awesome. I'm not saying I have a problem with Craig, but I'm just saying Craig was doing Coffee with Craig, which was sort of national. He only does it once in a while, but still. So anyway, Craig's doing the Florida Carry show. This week they had Alan on, and you got 15 minutes of listening to basically Alan talk about what's coming. If anybody watched this, I'd be interested in talking about it. Otherwise, I ain't talking about it. Take action against the ATF on pistol braces. I forget which one this one is. Oh, you know what this one is? This is some new guy. You probably don't know him. He's got 800 subs. the blind sniper, and I don't remember. I started subbing to him, I guess, probably a long time ago, and his video popped up. Whatever it had, just a few hits on it, 118. But that's how we got to enough comments that the ATF shut the heck up, right? Is from help like that. So I wanted to give a link to that guy. Let's see. Then we had Jared, which is where I figured out that the thing happened, that the ATF cowered. ATF put their tail between their legs, started peeing a little bit, and then eventually rolled over and started whimpering. Like if you beat them and you're like, what the hell? I didn't beat you. We just gave you some comments, ATF. What the hell? Now you're making it look like we beat on you. Stupid ATF. Let's see. So then who picks up the check when we all get involved in the, oh wait, that's just me playing around with this. Then you got Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And then the last one is that's Crump. I stuffed Crump down at here at the end because it's a different topic, right? It's talking about unfinished frames. But you know what? If we sit around gloating, then we're stupid. We're falling into traps. So we ain't going to do that. And that's why I didn't let nobody in here tonight. So we're 16 minutes in, and we got 10 people out there. And if you're still interested, then you're welcome to jump in. However, we're going to chat about some other stuff here before we get started. I'm not interested in having another show, right? Like on the same shit that happened all day again, or louder, or better, probably because we're better. But instead, we're going to talk about the evolution of the conversation. So instead of patting ourselves on the back because this was a win, was it even a win, right? So if you want to chat tonight, we're going to talk about stuff like why was that? Why did this happen? Why did it happen at Christmas? Why did it happen? And then why did we succeed real fast? Was that an accident? Was that a setup? Was that something that we're not paying attention to? We're very YouTube centric. Was there a radio show? We're not the only things out there. Was there something on the news that happened that ended this? I heard something about Congress people going over. So there's lots of other things that might have happened. Is this a tactic being used against us? Is this some sort of a test? A bunch of these Bloomberg plants and assholes that are useless might not be completely useless. Actually, they are completely useless, but we can make, lemonade out of their uselessness. And is this a tactic to be used against us? And if so, what strategies do we take? What do we do to guard against that? What factors? What do we use for that? Assuming it was an accident, or assuming it was an accident, or some sort of a missed counter move on our part. Again, how do we not freak out and be tinfoil hat about everything, right? As a group, and then how to keep a momentum going. We can all sit down because it's Christmas. Is that their goal, to get us all hyped up and then right before Christmas turn off the steam so that everybody goes, right? And now we think we've accomplished something. I think there's some potential, I don't know what the word is, manipulation probably. Let's see. And then I'm going to offer some suggestions. I've been just typing notes in here on the internal chat. Offer some suggestions like take your what you're thinking right now, what your feelings are today about what happened, and what of the situation so far, and consider making a video or some sort of a video diary type of captain's log type of shit, and then post that 6 months from now, or post that 2 months from now, or 7 months from now, whatever, and address it. As somebody who's been around from people who come to the scene and participate either as creators or as participants or as observers or as critics or cynics or whatever the hell, right? I've seen everything come and go. Oh, I don't know. I've stopped keeping track, but at least everything has come and gone 5 or 6 times. And some of these things have come and gone, many, many times. So as someone who's coming at it from that angle, from a perspective of these things are not the first time we've seen these things. It's not the last time. We shouldn't believe it's the last time. And there might be something deeper. If we see things more than once, are we becoming a mechanism? Are they using us? So, with that kind of stuff in mind, put something to yourself out there, your opinions and thoughts. Like, am I crazy? Or, like this guy suggested I do this, but he's nuts. And then maybe think about how to keep a mental snapshot for today. of the circumstances that happened. And that's, I know, a difficult task because I'm thinking of many different things here and I'm not expressing them all, but I think if I were to suggest specific things, it wouldn't be the same. But try to keep an idea of what's happening today, because this won't be the first time that this is going to happen. A time when everyone gets kind of shaken. Remember, there's a meme going around about taking a bunch of ants and shaking them up in a jar or something. They just shook up the jar, right? They didn't get the result they wanted, so they quit shaking. Or who knows what. But like I say, we can't sit here and strategize all day and night about what they might have done. But at the same time, I think it's healthy to keep track of if you're in an ambush or if you really won a skirmish, right? None of us are the generals and none of us are the hell are you when you first start, Umar? None of us are privates. So, we all have to be something in between. And most likely we're all individual players who just have to understand how things get done, but not necessarily have to play by any certain role in that scheme, right? We just have to be aware of how they're done so we can use it as a joint way to communicate. With all that said, I'm going to throw a link out there because I'm not a coward and I don't hide behind scripted, produced programming like other channels. This channel is designed to, like I say, have an open conversation. So feel free to jump in. That being said, I don't like you or you're weird or you're some kind of plot, then get out of here because you're just distracting and I'm not some sort of weird. Let's all, I guess it doesn't help if I put it in the internal. Let's all get along and play nice because I quit playing nice in 2015 at least with everybody. And I'll call it like I see it. And if you're a loser, waste of time, then take it to somebody who can actually want to play your little stupid game. With that said, we'll see if anybody jumps in. That's our required mopin for the beginning of the day. We'll see, click on names. That'll make people jump in here. There's DJ jumping in. Good evening.
Good evening. Great day for 2A.
Yep. Like I say, we're not gloating in here. Plenty of shows you can do that. We're talking about those topics or something else. I mean, we don't have to talk about this shit. But yeah, like I say, not that I'm an anti-gloating, but the evolution doesn't happen if we go through the same cycle. So like I said, there's plenty of time to gloat. With that, Barbecue jumped in. And
howdy.
See if anybody else jumped in.
Yeah. I'm definitely not in the gloating mood yet. I'm kind of skeptical of, I don't know, I'm looking at it as if they have an ulterior motive. To me, it just seems like we won the battle too easily.
Well, I don't want to give it to some sort of paranoid thing either. I'm just trying to be rationally skeptical. Yeah. That's the way to say it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be paranoid or anything. It's just one of those things where I'm kind of wondering, yeah, we hear the 4D chess thing thrown around a lot. And, are they trying a 4D chess thing and where they lull us into this false sense of security where we're like, hey, we won, and we're going to give ourselves a pat on the back.
Right. And going because we got way too many people in here. Yeah, I hear you, but I'm not going to also wallow in the fact that this is all paranoid delusion. You got Sunday's chat with Rhonda for that. So I'm just cutting you off because I'm rude, and a whole bunch of people jumping in here. So Bob jumped in.
Oh,
he's
sweet.
Actually the co-host of the show, so he's boss of all y'all. Technically in the hierarchy right now. I guess we got Angelina. Let's see, how do I make this happen? There's Angelina coming in from California. Thanks for joining. I forgot where you at. Cobalt Flame.
What's up, man?
Hello?
I believe he's from Texas.
Hey.
Okay, Texas. And then Barbecue is in Pennsylvania. DJ is in Nebraska.
Yes, sir.
And I'm in Arizona. So it's been a while since we had enough people in to have to do that. So that's pretty fun. So again, thanks everybody for jumping in. If you're all at the game, I'd rather not just pat ourselves on the back and stroke off about something. Because what if it was a mistake or something? What if it was just the Congress people did it or something and there's whatever? I really don't think so, honestly, because of all the comments the other day. But I don't want to harp on just shit I've done or, it's just our tendency to go, oh, it's a win. Here's everything we did right. And I don't want to look at everything we did wrong either. So it's freaking Christmas. But I'm also not really interested in this show and talking about freaking Christmas, even though it's awesome. Yeah, we can have a whole other show about Christmas. So if you're all down to have some, advanced conversation about 2A, and of course, everybody that's out there has the link. Jump in, use your keyboards and type. keep the conversation interesting and evolving. And I'll shut up. Go ahead. Thanks everybody for showing up.
All right, you're just going to stop.
You're not 2A. None of you are 2A. What?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I wish. There's several shows about how fucked Canada is because of we don't have the Second Amendment. Let it be a lesson.
Well, obviously, whatever we do down here, you guys are watching it, so I don't know how fast it'll affect you or not. But you're obviously paying attention to our election, I'm sure, too. But anyway, so if anybody's got any way to start or where to start, go. We've got a lot of people here.
Well, I'd like to start maybe with Angelina's observation in the chat. Essentially, that look what happens when we get motivated and continuing on. That mobilization, I think, is really wise. Everybody has their own interests within Second Amendment and its protections, and also other things that are related to 2A and firearms more directly, perhaps. I'm not clearing the board for this issue only, and whether or not it's going to pop up or in what form going forward. I'm going to make sure that I'm giving almost equal time now that I can no longer submit anything to Hearing Protection Act. I think that's a great place for my energy and for the research. So that's how I'm going to continue to mobilize.
Definitely 10 points for bringing that up.
Definitely.
Okay, so you're saying, let's see, you said out there earlier, help energize new gun owners. So you've seen Walt. I don't know if you've chatted with Walt directly or not, at least not in our chat, or I don't know. But you know how I'm talking about Walt, the guy from California, from Sacramento-ish, I think, or one of other cities.
No, I don't think I know who you're talking about.
Okay, so he's a lawyer type. He's going to lawyer school, and he's up, like I say, in one of them other cities north of LA, and does a bunch of chats about 2A and kind of whatever, freedom topics and what. Anyway, I was chatting with him, and well, I'm trying not to go on too many tangents, but basically chatting with him about something else, getting his insight on something. And in the process, it was, I guess the insight I was getting was about, or ended up being about some of the other content, not content creators, but 2A activists in California that I don't know about, I guess. And, because I don't know, you can imagine, I suppose, just like anybody, if you're thinking about the United States, we got a lot of elements to it. So when you focus it down to gun rights, okay, there's another element. And then you start thinking of states that have issues with gun rights, you start to make a list. And I think it comes out to about 9, usually, of like the worst. But, you can only keep track of so many things. So, somebody who's in California keeping track of California gun owners or California Second Amendment activists was interesting getting some insight because it made me think that we have seen it before actually, but I was going to say we haven't seen them flex their muscles in a while, but California gun owners who live under tyranny, basically worse than a lot of people and in a different way because you're in California and you're more of you. And, 7 million gun owners in California, I think we did the math one time, living in a giant population of, people as opposed to like a New York where it's, just a smaller physical space with this, large population or whatever. So a little bit different. And you can tell us, Angela, if that's really, maybe I'm just assuming, but it seems like once you take somebody who's like, let's say what's another analogy? Somebody's walking around with lead weights on their ankles and their wrists all the time. And then you let them out or you get them in a different gravity, they're a superhero. So these gun owners who are Second Amendment advocates in a place like California, you let them out on the national scene. Are they going to be the Jedis? Are they going to be the ninjas? And after talking to Walt, I'm thinking that, I get a little pushback when I say stuff like the NFA's got potential to be repealed, and people will tell me blah blah blah. Not everybody, but certain people will tell me that, and it's hard for me to go, no, I don't believe that. Like, I think there's really a reason, and I think that's a way for me to verbalize it more, to illustrate it more, is that the gun owners in California are so sick of it that the new generation of gun owners in California have been there already. They've been sick of it enough. They're not remembering the old days. There was no old days for you. So when you hit the national scene, I mean, it's got to be something similar to the like if Pelosi's the Dark Jedi or whatever they're called, like, all these new Jedis are going to pop up and bring light to that, with that same strength is what I guess I'm trying to say. Anyway, I don't know if I'm mansplaining it well, but anybody got any insight on that?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I don't know Star Trek that well, but I think California gun activists, or like people that care about 2A, I'll say, because we'll say that's anything from like, I pay attention to who I vote for, to like I show up at rallies. So wherever you fall in that spectrum, I mean, usually Californian gun owners are pretty good about things, and they're like, I mean, Freedom Week, like that definitely was pretty energizing, because it was like with a stroke of the pen, we got like a week of, hey, you can buy these magazines that were not banned, but prohibited in some way. So, yeah, like, I mean, I haven't been reading a bunch of stuff because I've been working, but from just things I've heard from like some newer gun owners I know, because like, so with the whole like Corona thing, and like state of the world thing, I guess we'll call it, I know a bunch of like, so I know this guy who was like a super, super liberal. His parents were 60s hippies. Like, guns are like so bad in that family, like crazy. Anyway, he's not like that anymore, and he bought a gun. So I've been like helping him shoot and like gun shop and all that. And one of the things that basically, like, we learn about safety and we learn about protecting gun rights. Like, that's the first two things. And so, he's pretty stoked about this whole ATF thing today. And he's like, oh shit, like, you actually like show up and do something, and here we are. So
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
Running off traffic, or are you about to hit something?
I don't know.
I was going to ask when that person, because I think you've described that person before. Was that out of like fear of like, I need a gun to protect myself, or was it like more, or was that all, or was it also, if they're going to take this and make it like the last time, where if you don't already have it, you can't have it again? Like, I need to get it now because I can't get it later, and I don't know what it is, but I need to get it now because otherwise I won't get it. And I'm just curious if you even know.
Yeah, it was so both of those, and he just was like getting an interest in guns, like wanting to shoot and get into shooting and like the sport of it.
Natural, like, oh, now I want to try one of those, and now I want one of those, and now I want one of those.
I've been telling him for like, geez, maybe like 5 or 6 years, like, dude, when you're ready, let's go shooting, I'll take you. So I've been like nudging him for years and years, and finally he was like, hey, I'm ready. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty I like getting new shooters, and especially in California, because I feel like we need people that care about gun rights, because as everybody knows, there's people that own guns and they like shooting, but they don't really like show up for guns, and then there's people that will show up for guns. So I like to make sure we breed the latter.
And I don't think it's that people are like, if they had a choice, or if they saw both paths in front of them, they'd be like, oh no, I'm going down this path with no action. If you don't know that you can take action, or what the action is, or when to take it, right? You need sometimes just to be aware.
Oh yeah, I think I would say like over half of those people, I mean, there's a certain percentage of lazy, like they just aren't going to do anything. But I think most of those people, if they were just aware and like aware of things that they could do, they would show up for guns. And that's why, like, for me personally, like with the whole submitting comments, I mean, I was telling people that I know they're not into guns really. Like they're on the I don't want to take them away, but I don't really care and I don't own a gun. They're like on that level. I mean, I was telling them because they care about freedom and shit. So like, it's, as they know, it's a slippery slope. You take one thing, something else later. So yeah, I mean, I think letting people know and just spreading the word is a huge part of showing up for guns.
Well, here, all this dead air should have been 2A stuff. We should have been solving stuff right there. So I'm typing stuff in side chat for homework for all these people that are out there just not paying nothing. They're just sitting there getting entertained. So was it a win? Did we win?
I think so, yeah.
I call for cautious optimism.
It's gotta be. I mean, whatever. I mean, we don't know what the hell, so I mean, it wasn't like, oh, they always do this 1-2 move, and this was the first part of a 1-2 move, and we'd be dumb to think we're over. I mean, they've always done it like here, oh, here, oh, so they just did their normal thing. They did it now, but I don't know. I've just saw some murmur. I really wasn't trying to pay attention to it today because we won already, but I wasn't trying to pay attention to the people that were like, oh, we won, right? So did anybody watch any of those things or pay attention to any of those, read any of those things that were overly optimistic that it was over and ready to like, let's move into Christmas or get back to that buyer's guide. Let's remember to make some money this week. Or, is anybody paying attention to that attitude? So we can.
Well, every time we do something like that, they always come back later to reattack whatever it is we say we've won. So it's not a battle that ends with just one fight. It's something that we constantly have to keep going after.
You got any examples? Because I don't like to go with always, and this never happens. Not in the advanced class.
Not off the top of my head at this time.
Not that, no worries. I mean, it's not like you have to bring notes or something. I'm just curious if you did have some done in mind or whatever that we could rip apart. Because I hear you. I just hate to. I'm not going to.
Well, for example, we had the assault weapons ban in '94.
We don't pay attention to who they are. Go ahead.
We had the assault weapons ban in '94, right? And that sunsetted, and everybody was like, "Oh, yay, we won." Well, now they're still trying to push something like that again.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Here's the thing, though. That happened in '94. It sunsetted in 2004. It's 16 years later. I think the reason it took 16 years is because they needed our parents to die. Because when that happened in '94, they all had no jobs in '95. Like, literally. I'm going to have to go back and do some research because I keep acting like it's an absolute, and I just say absolutes are bullshit. But from what I remember, it was paradigm changing because there was nothing like a working NRA that was, the NRA was better than it was now because there was fewer resources. So it was effective, what it was doing. And it said repeal everybody, but everybody was upset at the time anyway. They would have done it. In other words, it's not like the NRA can say that they did it or that they were all they did is point, and everybody was already running. But anyway, that left an echo. That left a resounding echo. They left a sunset in there, which that was unprecedented. It's still unprecedented. There's no laws that have sunset. Well, that's not true. There's a couple of gun laws that have sunsets because of that one, but I can't think of too many other laws like Obamacare or whatever, all the different healthcare suggestions. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to suggest to somebody, hey, we think this will work, so we're going to make it die in 10 years? I don't see them doing that very often. I think it was too valid a political strategy for us, the people who have to deal with the laws. It didn't work for them where they get to just keep compounding them, but that's another story maybe. Anyway, so that one did have some resounding effect, but I don't know. It's way too far away. Different generation, different times, different tech, different issues, really, different mindset. Overton window got thrashed around, different political structures and everything. So history between now and then, thinking back to it as an example of something is nice, but I don't think there's too many direct analogies. So I'm not going to suggest just because it happened then we can make it happen again, but I think there's an opportunity. But I don't know where you were going, but I just wanted to throw that in about whatever, 95, 94, I guess.
Well, the rhythm and the cadence of things that we live with every day in this solar system have flexibility built into them. I mean, Bob can probably toss in on this one because he's like the farthest north of us. But you know, long days, short days, you know, that kind of thing. We're used to that in the changes of the seasons. And I guess to get back to the point as it was sort of being made, for every sunset, we need to expect a dawn, and it might not be the same thing coming back around. The weather's going to change day to day. So we can't rest just because it's dark and not be prepared to meet the new day. And that would be anything new that comes our way, plus a mindful eye on anything that might reappear and how to use any positive reflections of our interactions with the system right now and refine them. I'm thinking.
Yeah, we've had quite a few actually. I'd have to sit there and think about them, but I'm trying. Over on Minuteman University, I've attempted multiple ways to post my research and my discovery as I try to have conversations like this, and then after the fact go map out what we were talking about. But there's been a couple of attempts where they've tried to bring back something like an assault weapons ban. I mean, obviously way out more often at state level, but they have it, and it's one of their boilerplate things. They bring it up anytime there's an atrocity that somebody decides to use a firearm to make themselves infamous with the media and all that. That's one of their comebacks, their reflex actions, is to bring one of those out. And it, over time, of course, started with the Nazi plan, from what everybody says. Literally in 1968, they took the Nazi plan and like erased stuff, did a Freedom of Information or something, and people figured out they literally took the Nazi plan from whatever they asked for it. It's got like the records of them asking for it, and then you look at them side by side. All they did is erase a bunch of the Nazi words, and that's where it started. And then everybody voted it in somehow in '68. I wasn't alive yet, so I can't be blamed, right? And then it's been what do you call it? Like efforted to create that a couple of times since, but anyway, it hasn't been successful for sure. I don't think though that it's been pushed very hard, and it's pushed in such a way, like usually with so many things, that it's, what's the word? Like it's, I don't want to say comedic because it's got more, it's got worse consequences than that, but it's like pathetic maybe. Like they just, what I'm saying? Everybody's experienced it. I don't know if I'm obviously preaching to the choir, but you know what I mean? They always just bring that same old, same old. The only thing they do is just add more heat to it. So potentially that's all we're looking at now. Not all we're looking at, but that's what we're looking at now, right? Is the worst case scenario would be that thing that's been evolving. And can you imagine what a bunch of novices who hate the property and the concept of ownership would do to an assault weapons ban if they had free reign, or what they thought would be free reign? But I don't need to get into all that.
If I may, G?
Yeah, take it.
I want to reply to, or not really reply, but draw attention to the Gun Snob's comment. He says, anytime you have a win, you have to capitalize on it, or you won't have any momentum. That's absolutely true. And so what I'd like to say is, not only should we, take this victory for what it is and move on, but we can attack. So the anti-gunners, anti-2A forces against us are attacking us on multiple fronts, be it assault weapons bans, be it the pistol brace issue, be it bump stocks, whatever. They're always coming at us from different angles. Why don't we do the same thing for our side? I forget who it was in the chat here, or in the, I guess the chat here, that mentioned they were trying to draw support for the Hearing Protection Act. If you want to go ahead and answer, whoever that was.
Yeah, that was me. Sorry.
DJ?
DJ.
Yeah, sorry about that. I couldn't remember who it was. So why don't we do the same thing? Me personally, and I know Guns of Barbecue, you might have some reservations about the way I approached it, but I personally want to see constitutional carry passed across the United States using the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. And since there's no federal mandate on carrying of arms, and that the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed on bearing arms, that any state constitution that says anything, or any state mandate that says anything against carrying arms, is null and void. If anyone else has any other avenues of attack that we could use, go ahead and mention it. But hey,
Well,
Waltz here.
Cool. And yeah, I need to let y'all know that my state, we have, the state constitution allows, local law does not. I am stuck in Douglas County, Omaha, Nebraska, and there's a law against open carry. So that created a situation where before anybody other than private investigators, personal security could carry concealed, and there was no concealed permit available to the general citizenry, you either just were quiet about concealed carry or you went without, because you couldn't open carry. And I've always thought, and I haven't spent enough time paying attention really in states where open carry is allowed, to how that becomes it's a normative process. People don't freak out when they see one because they've seen more than one on more than one successive trip outside their house. So yeah, I'm totally with that, man, and trying to make sure that there are enough people in each state from outside of that state who will address state issues. Absolutely, I would like to see the repeal, the repeal of that local law sometime in the next year or two. It's going to take some work.
Didn't the Ninth Circuit state that you can't restrict if you have a restriction on concealed or you have a restriction on open carry, you have to allow the other without too impactful of restriction?
Mm-hmm. Or at least that was a decision that wasn't challenged, or somehow it became a precedent, right? That what you're saying, like if you can't restrict both open carry and concealed carry, or I mean, shall issue and may issue, or no, both, right?
I simply do not know. I'm underinformed.
Right. Yeah, so it has nothing to do with tonight or what's going on right now anyway. That's changing or what. So that all started from asking about, was it a win tonight? And then why, if it was a win, why did we win?
Can I take a swing at that, G?
Yes, go.
I think what you showed the other day, when you were reading all the comments, I was astounded on how logical many of the arguments were.
Many, like even the shortest ones were like honed daggers. Like holy crap.
You're not a sports fan, but I was literally cheering like it was like we had just won the goddamn World Series. I know it's not like that, but it
sounded like I was knocking over shit, but it was me going, oh, you can't hear it now either, probably. But that's me clapping. Like that doesn't sound like it. I listened to some of it in the mic and it sounds like I punched the dog or something, but that's me like clapping and shit when
everyone you read it,
I totally did it random. I thought it was going to be like drudgery, like, okay, now I'm going to like blah, 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 right? And then like a good one once in a while or like whatever, but holy crap. Like I didn't do it justice. You need somebody who knows what they're doing to like do that. I'm going to go back and continue to read them because that was amazing. But yeah, that I think what we're saying is that part of it. Like, how can that not be a win? The fact that many people got together and let our employees know, yeah, like in a great way. Oh man, what a win! That's ours to lose. But I'll mansplain in your answer. You can you're a man. You can mansplain your own answer.
Well, it teaches us, and it teaches maybe even could tie it back to those newer kids that haven't seen a bunch of these battles. That the logical arguments is always the way to go. That if we sit around and we hone our arguments towards what's the next thing, I think we all can agree, and the NFA can bite me. And because of this, I looked up a bunch of stuff about the NFA that I didn't know and looked up the stats that go with it. So now we can start fighting with, say, short barrel shotguns, one of my favorite ones. Criminals don't really use short barrel shotguns, so there shouldn't be illegal because bad guys really don't use them. And if your law is saying there's no reason to have a short barrel shotgun other than nefarious acts, Well, they haven't proven their argument.
We got a girl lawyer here, so here's the deal. When something exists and it's been proven good to go, and it's basically the exact same thing as a thing that's illegal, isn't that some sort of precedent or better lawyer word for like, now we got them, they can't justify making this other thing illegal because it's just like this thing that ain't?
What? I wasn't listening.
Okay, so with the whole thing that happened here, let's assume that, you know, they were like, hey, what's going on? These things are so difficult to, we said it's okay to do this one thing, but now it's sort of evolved and it's really difficult to classify. So we're going to put out some clarification, blah, blah, blah. But the clarification, blah, 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 got everybody so upset that we don't know what to do. So now the ATF is just like, oh, we don't know what to do. I'm asking you as a lawyer lady, isn't there some sort of isn't there some kind of a lawyer magic where if a thing that's legal exists and it's good to go and it's been proven good to go, this way, that something that's illegal that looks just like it and smells just like it and shaped just like it has no justification to be illegal anymore because of ex post facto or some legal word?
Yeah, I mean, like a legal precedent being set.
I don't know if it's precedent or what, but I thought I think that it seems like, as just watched enough Perry Mason or whatever, but it just seems like, that's where we're headed with the brace. I thought that in 12, like as soon as the brace exists in peace and harmony with the rest of the world, then how do they ever justify SBRs? But I don't know how to say that in lawyer, and I don't have any idea if I'm actually right. I'm just thinking it sounds logical or something.
I mean, they would, a precedent would really be the main benefit of the whole thing, because then that's what I can't think of what it was what I was going to reference now, but
basically somebody could say, hey, I'd like to have an SBR with no tax stamp, and they'd go, heck no, and you could go, well, you let us have a brace, and here's that.
Blowjob versus California had blah 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 blah, and they won, so here we are today. And then you go from there. I like how the name I came up with, like the first one I thought was blowjob. That's great.
Yeah, classy. Well, this is the advanced class, so it's only adults in here. Except for like genius kids. Like if there's a Doogie Howser of 2A, they can be in here. Or is there like a girl Doogie Howser, or do girls just have to assume they can't be geniuses?
I think girls' brains aren't that big.
You can be robots. I've seen shows where girls can be robots, but I've never seen a girl genius until everybody got woke. So,
awesome.
If there is such a thing as a girl genius, then in 2A, then they could also be in here.
They're discouraged from being so due to social pressure, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, kind of is. Let's see. But if they're so woke, then why don't they just Wonder Woman up and like demand to be smarter or something? I don't know. We can't solve women at the same time as we're solving 2A, so let's just do one at a time, because otherwise I feel like they'd be sloppy if we solved them both at the same time. Plus, it's not woke to just solve it here with 5 dudes, I think. All right, well, so I'm trying to read through. Well, put a bunch of words in here. Sorry?
You don't know that everyone's a dude. Like, isn't that part of the woke, that like you can't tell anyone they're a dude anymore?
I'm only front and woke. I'm not really woke. I just act woke.
Guns and Barbecue called me an amiga, so I think that means I'm a female now.
So there's 2 chicks.
So I don't know. Walt put a lot of words in here. I don't know if I have to read all this because I was reading a bunch yesterday. I feel like I've read enough for the week. So if that's something important, let me know. But
pretty sure
anyway,
Hauser.
No, I'm saying, well, okay, but no, he's not. He's older than that. I'm saying if there's a youngin out there, can you imagine what a youngin? I can't imagine. I don't know any kids. The only kids I know are like 11 and younger. So they play video games. That's all they do. But I can't imagine what a high school kid today is thinking about 2A.
I'm going to start getting my 7-year-old trained up.
All right, so I'm trying to jump over to my lists again. So that. What if it was an accident, a tactic against us? What would that mean? First off, so anybody want to tackle if it was an accident? Well, let's just go with one because that's pulling a ghost on everybody. So I guess I'll just do an old-fashioned round around, or whatever it's called. Does anyone think it was an accident? Let me just put it that way. Is it possible that it was? I mean, you don't have to be like, I think it's an accident and it's all could have been. But is it possible that it was an accident? Or
What part of it?
I don't really know what you're asking here.
I guess, sorry, accident meaning like we won. And I just don't want us to think like, oh, we did it. If it was like maybe 2 or 3 senators went over there and said, hey, what do you, come on, man. And they're like, oh yeah, snap. And then
Well, that
quit
would
it.
be an accident. That means
Well, I'm saying if they did it on their own initiative, like they had some other big, I don't know, whatever, but not us. And then, or if it was like the radio shows got together and said it. I mean, I guess you could call that back to being a win, but I'm just trying to think about in the past when something happens, we tend to go right on. Everything we did was right and it worked. Let's move on and start talking about XYZ. And we never really think about, did what we do work? And if so, was it effective? Or I guess if not, was it effective? And I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. I'm not trying to talk shit or suggest something. I don't know nothing. I'm just trying to come up with questions that would be used in an after action to play devil's advocate so that we don't just assume everything we did was perfect and next time it'll be even easier and all that kind of crap that we would delude ourselves with, especially if it's a tactic. If this is some sort of weird, like push it on them at Christmas, get them all stressed, pull it from them, then at New Year's, ruin their New Year's with a 80% or a can thing. And then, or worse, like what if it's somebody just messing with us, to sell a bunch of something or to distract from something else. Like, we're trying to pull a bunch of stuff into the country over here. And the best way to do it is get gun owners mad. I just want to make sure we're not being a mechanism from that angle, I guess, and I'll quit shutting up because otherwise the question gets too big. Anybody want to attack any of those?
If you're saying it was because of a senator or something going behind the scenes of doing it, what would be the motivation? What would they stand to gain from saying, hey, if you calm down on this, because this is how senators and politicians in general work. If you do this, we'll give you this. So what would the politicians stand to gain from saying, hey, calm down on the brace issue? It leaves something to be answered there.
I'm throwing dice. I don't have any kind of theory in mind or like conspiracy thoughts or something. I just was trying to make us challenge what was on the face or what seems to be apparent.
Does anyone else have any possible idea?
I'll take a swing at it. And then it's good to see Walton.
Hey.
Yeah, I want to thank you and G-Webs for helping me a lot with my logical arguments, and I'm going to go back to that. I think it taught government people, ATF, senators, that we have really logical arguments on our side and we're not afraid to use them, and we can think it through, and we're not just a bunch of dumb gun nuts. We're actually very smart gun nuts. And even if it only took one senator to read through that and then made a couple phone calls, however we win, that's a win, man.
I agree.
We'll never know. We'll never know.
But I guess, is it unfair to just assume, though? I mean, if it was, I guess, I don't know if we can know this. It would be something that would be like on a list of tasks for people that want to take on extra tasks because they're not satisfied ever, or they have the kind of ability they can just take on extra tasks without even thinking about it. But to go back and look at what happened in the past, do they tell us like anything? Like, do we expect to have some sort of like a report from the ATF that says this is why it was withdrawn or whatever they called it? Technically, is there a difference in definition? I think some of the reports I've seen or the posts I've seen on Instagram either were intended to suggest or imply or whatever the words are. And I don't know the people enough to know if they know something or if they're just trying to talk it or stir up some shit. But
I think that it would take official inquiry, wouldn't it, in order to have them have to proffer an opinion?
From what I've heard,
it would require going back and figuring it out from past.
From what I heard on NEA's chat, I believe today, it was only withdrawn pending DOJ basically guidance. So if the DOJ says they need to pursue it, then they're gonna get right back on it. And also to
That doesn't mean
oh,
but every other
who was
one.
it? Who was it? Where the hell is it? Okay. NetFlutter's comment, is it just a timeout until inauguration day? I don't like to get into the partisanship. I don't think that any of this should be partisan based, but he does make a point. Is it just until the Biden presidency so that one administration can wash their hands of it while the other administration tag teams it? I mean, is that what they're going for?
If so, then it's definitely some sort of a weird, poke it around at Christmas to screw with people, distract them, figure out how interested they are. I don't know, but no, I don't know.
I mean, I think we can safely assume everybody, or not everybody, but we can safely assume there are many, many people interested in it. When I looked on the comment page today, there were 48,000 comments on there, including my own. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant number.
Has anybody looked? Has it jumped again? Because the last time I saw it jump was to 48, and then I haven't seen it jump since then. What was it at Govern? No, it's at Federal Regulation or something. Federal Register. Yeah.
Well, does anybody know, or has anybody tried to throw a comment on after we got notice that they closed it? I mean, like, is that even still?
Yes,
it's at 67.
Oh,
67,401 right now. I'm looking
That's
at
awesome.
Always comment on the register. They're open for a window where they will be accepted onto the record, but you can always put them on the register. So the Federal Register, from what I understand from reading it, and I'm no expert, but from what I understand, it will take the info as long as they have it there, and then they'll accept, the entries or whatever for use during. And it even had an exception in there, like if you send something and it's important and you miss the window, then still send it and let us know, and it'll be there. And then if necessary, we can access it. We just won't put it in the public record, but we can access it if necessary. So it's like still a thing. So it's sort of like, I think somebody was saying the other day, like this is supposed to be the record that, the government keeps an open, diary of what's been happening, a journal of what's happened. Anyway, so yeah, I think people are suggesting to keep commenting or what, but
I am.
And on the other hand, at what point is it beating a dead horse or just wasting resources? If we're motivating people to become aware, or if we're motivating people to call to action, what about, okay, that worked. Now take that same amount of time you would have spent on number 70,000 or 80,000 public comment that has no use anymore, technically, and send that to a representative of a state or, some other alternative route that, would be a way to change. And that's one of my next questions coming up in a bit, to use the momentum that we've got instead of just waves and waves on something that's already closed, taking that effort and learning how to change direction. Because again, I don't want to be a mechanism. That would be the worst potential, right? If they know they can do something and this just reinforces that behavior or that patterning, we don't need to be, well, I guess keep saying manipulate. We don't want these things to be done and us not paying attention to any kind of patterns or cycles. Anyway, I'm tinfoil hatting a bit, but I'll shut up so that y'all can take it.
Yeah. So I think that if we can keep commenting, we should. However, I have a couple reasons for that. The first reason is the matter of public record, just getting it out there so people can see it, getting it out there so that it exists and it's in a place. The second reason is in case they do try to necro this thing, which is highly likely based on my reading of that ATF notice earlier. It seems like they're going to go back to the drawing board and then resubmit something else. It seems highly likely that this is going to be what happens. So with all that in mind, yes, we should be stockpiling our ammo, basically getting ready for that next fight. I think to your point, though, G, you also bring up a really good point, which is that we need to treat this like a chess game, right? So we need to play the board. We don't need to worry about playing the other player. We're simply playing the board. There are certain mechanical outcomes that are going to become necessary as byproducts of the Second Amendment fight. Just like
I'm not used to that analogy, so follow through. But then I'm going to make a note, come back and tell us what you're talking about. But
so when you, so basically, right, when you play chess, at a certain point, it doesn't matter. You're not trying to play a psychological game with the other player necessarily, right? You're just playing where the pieces are out on the board because there's certain options that people have, and your goal is to outmaneuver your opponent by making better moves. But it's not like poker. It's not a psychological game. And right now, we're at a point where we have a lot of momentum in the gun community. We have a lot of resources right now being focused. We have a lot of eyes on us. We have a lot of people that are motivated to act. And the only logical move
with a win now, right? Like with a with a thing they can look at. Right?
Yeah, they're like, think about it, right? They're angry and they won. Those are two really good motivators because they establish confidence, right? But then they also it creates a powerful motivator to cause change, a powerful motivator for action, right? So in my mind, I think that being able to take that and leverage it into future fights, using this to create as many 2A activists as we can right now and driving them forward is a good thing. But again, we also have to, like, we should be doing that. That seems to be the best possible move that we can make because we have all kinds of other battles that are currently happening that where we focused energy on this ATF brace issue, but we didn't focus on small town city ordinances. We didn't focus on the COVID relief bill and a whole bunch of crazy stuff that happened there. We haven't been talking about some of the big legal fights that have been happening in the Ninth Circuit for a little bit. There's a lot of different moving pieces in the 2A battle that we have to kind of keep our eyes on. And so we have to pick our focus areas, really hammer it down, and kind of just determine a course forward. So that's kind of why I'm saying, like, play it like a chessboard, like war game it, right? Like, where do you want your troops to go? Do they have the morale to make it there? Like, that's kind of where I'm going. We want to use what we have because it's a big gain for us in this kind of temporary battle over braces, but we need to still be, I think, viewing the war, if you will, in its totality.
Hey, Walt.
Let people chime in, but I'm going to ask a question I threw in the chat, but then also I'm going to throw in a second one to go back to that concept you said again about the player versus the game, and then to use chess and checkers, chess and poker as the contrast. But somebody was about to say something.
Hey, Walt.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, I'm going to piggyback off of you a little bit when you said to basically make more, I guess you said activists. Sorry, we talked about my memory earlier. You said create more activists, right? So what if it's possible that they were following because Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, to fight on contested ground is basically unfavorable, right? So maybe that's why the ATF backed off. They realized with the amount of responses they got, it was contested ground and it's not worth fighting. So why don't we make every bit of ground contested so that they don't have, as in the ATF or any other policymaker, etc., any adversarial force we have working against our interests, why don't we make every bit of ground contested ground, be it, like you said, local ordinances, be it my personal pet, which is constitutional carry, be it DJ's pet, which is the Hearing Protection Act. We have the numbers. We have the numbers to fight a fight like that. So why don't we make every bit of ground they have to fight on contested to where they back off? And not only back off, but we take the initiative and force it through what we want. If you're following, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at speaking.
No, I hear you. I don't know if you're directing that to a specific person.
Yeah.
The problem is
I'm just piggybacking off of Walt, but it's always to the group and to whoever was.
I'm just saying what we want versus what's actually been able in the past versus what is possible to move people to do with current tech or trends or traditions. So in the past, we've very rarely been able to get a bunch of people on task and then to get them to effectively alter course instead of just going home. I'm not aware of a success, but I also haven't been anywhere near able to go research that or bring people on to talk about there are some people on my, we want to call it, like on my radar, that I think I could ask those kind of questions to, who might have lived through or know of through research, if the bigger picture, if that's a thing. But and that's sort of my question when Walt was talking about it too. So maybe if this is going back to Walt, like what he's saying is, it would be great if we were generals commanding loyal and obedient troops, but we're not. We're not herding cats, because I'm sick of that analogy. That's weak. What we are is a bunch of generals. We're not anything. We are a bunch of individuals who have a few generals or people maybe that call themselves, depending, but we're basically volunteers working as volunteer militias with a common goal. And the best you can really hope for is to say, let's take that hill, who's with me? Or please take that hill, somebody, right? Like you don't get to say, everybody go take that hill because I know better, or I've got a bigger position. We don't, I'll shut up.
No, I agree with you, G. You make a perfect point. However, I will say that, and Walt, I told you about this earlier, my previous experience with the comment periods with ATF when they had the bump stock one, a lot of people commented and they just said, yeah, no, fuck that. And they went against it. This one, they backed off on. Their motivation for backing off, we can debate that till the end of time. But the fact is they did back off. So why don't we use that as a rallying point? Say, hey, look, yeah, we won a victory. Now that we took this hill, going with your example, G-Webs, now that we took this hill and we proved we can, it's not someone saying, we're going to take this hill because I know better. It's we're going to take this hill because we already took that one over there. So let's take that one and that one.
Yeah, I think the proper way to view the fight, if you will, because G is absolutely right. We only have some localized kind of command, right? We can encourage people to do things, but we don't have hard control, right? And that's always an issue with libertarian activism. That is the significant disadvantage that, say, like let's just say like the right-wing libertarians have when compared to the left wing, because they really love that collectivization and going a little bit more hive mind, right? So we do have to work with that in mind. We can do it. There's ways to do it, and it's just by making those persuasive arguments, winning those influence battles, and then directing people out there. Because the reality is there's a whole bunch of fights, there's a whole bunch of contested ground. What we want to do is make sure that we make everything contested, make everything difficult, and that will go really well. Like I'm looking at like John Crump in the comments right now. John, I admire your work, thank you so much. But I'm saying like, I assume he's talking about like what's going on with Walmart and a whole bunch of stores having to provide information to the ATF. That's another fight too. And we need to be treating these things from people that have been in the community for a while. This is why I love talking with old timers in this community, is because we get to treat these things. We get an idea of what's going on with these threats, and we get an idea of what to expect next and what patterns there are. This is why I don't think we're playing poker anymore. It's not an enemy hiding their hand from us. They don't have a new play in the book. They haven't suggested a new play in the book for a minute. Not since really. Damn. I don't think that they've suggested anything radical. I think they might have applied the same tools just in slightly different ways. But the arguments that I've been seeing have been the same arguments my entire life. I haven't seen anything new. And I don't think that there's really much new under the sun. That might be like a really hot take for me that's really debatable, but I'll swing at that.
I'll say that we're not even playing checkers anymore. We're playing Go.
Yeah, game's over when both players agree that it is. It's an apt analogy. Yeah.
No, you're right, because stupid ass, what's it called? Like, long game versus game that ends. Like, we're wrong if we're playing chess, because chess has an end. Like, chess has a conclusion, and we're not playing that kind of game, right? I forget the real term for long game.
Yeah, chess has definitive in-game states. There are possibilities where it's a standoff until players agree it's not, but compared to some other games. So I think it just kind of depends on what aspects we're looking at. Obviously real life is more complicated than any analogy is going to give us, but and this is why I don't play too much in analogy, but the bottom line is that We know what's in their hand. We know what's in their playbook. We have that established. Like any one of us can go and sit in on an every town meeting or whatever. Every one of us can go and see what they're saying in their books, their publications, what they've put out, their manuals, how they intend to fight. We can see where their ad spend is. We have all of this information. We know exactly where they're moving, how they intend to move. And then we also have really skilled investigators, which is why I'm super excited. I'm kind of fanboying over John Crump out there. But yeah, like, we have super skilled people who have been in this, like I said, and they know what's going to happen. They can sense when the tides are changing. They know who to talk to. So
before I forget, or am I going to?
Oh, go ahead.
So as you're saying that, I'm thinking, yeah, I don't disagree, but like, come on, it's been like that for a long time. Come on, man, it's been like that for a long time, right? So at what point do we feel confident enough that their playbook doesn't change and they aren't capable of changing it, so we can manipulate them as a mechanism the way I'm afraid they're using us, or I'm concerned that they have been using us unintentionally?
Play them at their own game.
Yeah, they have been
with them. At least get them to a point where they figure out, oh, these guys aren't just basic players. These guys are playing for real, and they're willing to get to that level. And I don't know. And that's what I was going to say, is if we're able to get to that level, is there a way to understand the opponent, to know not just how to manipulate them, but then how to manipulate them to their end game, to their steps to, therefore I'm done.
Just like in chess, you have to be able to play both sides of the board. You're making judgments on prediction a lot of the time, but if you pay attention and you practice gambits, they're the same from both sides of the board. So too is how we should be approaching every topic that is debated. Pros and cons are also met, with your own overlay of right or wrong. But if you treat them as neutral points and adjudicate them not to your distinct advantage, but to your greatest understanding, you're going to be able to face the opponent across the board, castle 15 moves in, and catch him with something he forgot from the third grade. And again, and additionally, you don't win a tournament on one game. So paying attention to the gambits, I think, is going to be something that we need to refresh ourselves on.
Yeah, and I think, like, let's put it this way. They intend to target our biggest weakness, which is what? That we're divided, right? That we're a whole bunch of individuals that are really slow to move towards collective action, because it's just kind of not what our side is about.
Yes, but the way you said it a minute ago, the way you said it is that they have the same playbook. I say that the only reason they can have the same playbook is because they know that we're an inevitable conclusion. Like, they understand what we're going to do. We are a known entity. We react the same way every time. I've used the analogy for years that we're a punching bag. They can walk up to it, grin as hard as they want, punch us with any type of punch they want, and just stand there with photo ops as the punching bag loses momentum due to friction and gravity and never touches them again. They can do anything they want and stand there, and it's going to come up and do nothing to them. And they can do that as much as they want. And we always do the same damn thing. Always. Sorry.
You mentioned that who was it that mentioned that we are all kind of divided by nature?
That was me. That was me.
Sorry.
I mean, if I can, I was going to say, if I can just finish that thought really quick.
Go ahead.
My whole point with this is that they've been preying on this as though it's our greatest weakness. In actuality, it's our greatest strength as well. And they haven't recognized it adequately as our greatest strength, meaning that because we are individuals, we have the capacity to be this unpredictable, wild force in the ring. We have the capacity to support very unorthodox angles consistently from all kinds of different positions that will make them very uncomfortable. And so just talking about that from the information game that happens in the 2A activist space and to counter the gun control narrative, yeah, why wouldn't we leverage that individuality? Why wouldn't we turn our weakness into a strength, right? We can feign that weakness all we want, to the point of Art of War, right? The idea is that now we have lured them into a pattern. Like, I'm thinking of like my old wrestling coaches in junior high and like my jujitsu, whatever, teachers and whatever. But like, they would have you kind of sit there and take the same kind of move 3 times before you flip a guy over, just so that on the 3rd time they try extra hard and they give you all the momentum you need to do that judo flip, right? Like, we can do the same thing here. They're anticipating that we're going to show up with emotional reactions. They're anticipating that we're going to give them really bad arguments that they are used to dealing with. And they're going to go about their whole campaign of emotional anecdotes and misappropriated, misquoted, bad science. And they think that they're going to get away with that. Little do they know that the data, when it's explored, is coming out on our side. We're just not leveraging it. So why not just surprise them by leveraging that? That's like giving them an uppercut when they're going in for, for a double leg or something. It's a knockout blow. That's how you win the public narrative. That's a good answer there. Now, we still have regulatory fights. We still have all those other fights, and I don't have all the answers for those because I'm not a lawyer yet. But we can win the social battle pretty easily, especially in the current climate. So we just have to step on the gas. We have to judo flip them, and we got to keep moving. That would be kind of my answer. So
the way I see it is we need to treat this kind of like the Vietnam War when it was the NVA versus North Vietnam versus the American forces, right? So, G, you said that the ATF uses the same tactics every single time. So in the Vietnam War,
actually,
the NVA recognized that every time the Americans were going to take a hill, they would basically bombard the shit out of it with artillery, or they would bombard the shit out of it with airstrikes, right? So that's our tactic that we recognize. Walt, you said we need to dominate the social sphere. So the NVA was able to gain a lot of support from the public through propaganda. Now, we're not propagandizing per se, but we are trying to present the arguments for our side. And so if we can dominate that, we have the so-called propaganda to fuel our side and fuel, what is it called? Manpower, I guess you could say. And we keep attacking them as we know they're going to attack. And so once, I just lost my train of thought. Fuck.
I gotcha. The problem is to understand when they're going to attack so that you can, you can see their whatever, so you know it's when they telegraph, what, you seeing it, you know what to do, have some sort of thing to react on your end. And that's the hard part, is getting it to, either having a bunch of people watching or people willing to jump in and do something. Doesn't take everybody, but it just keeps somebody, you have to have a watch for that. And if they don't do it frequently enough, you just, like anything, you can discourage a watch by being infrequent or irregular, so that, you catch them, they catch you when you're down. I think that's that. Well, one of the problems doing this in the middle of the night is that we're not all coming to this with like notes or nothing. This is really just, shooting the shit, I guess, a little bit, ideally with a little bit more structure though. So I appreciate everybody who's interested in, having these kind of discussions. There was a couple of things there I was going to dig into, but I don't know if we're going down tangents or not.
Can I jump back? Can I jump back to that earlier tangent when I sent you a wall of text?
Yeah, that's probably why you jumped in after saying, I can't jump in tonight.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I can't. I'm like, oh wait, no, I can figure it out. So, okay. So there was a really bad decision from the Supreme Court on the NFA, where this was back US v. Miller, 1939. I think you're probably familiar with that one.
Yep.
So,
go ahead.
So paragraph 5 kind of gives us an out. So when we look at the decision and they talk about it, they basically say, and I offered a TLDR at the end. We can skip to that if we want. But basically, they're saying that Well, there's not a Second Amendment justification for this sawed-off shotgun because it's not a military arm. If it was an arm that would be in service for the military, you could have it. Like, why aren't we jumping on that? You know what I mean? Like these,
and that's been frustrating for a long time. But you're right. They, it's like, oh, it's always been there. Yeah, but it's it's a sliver. Yeah, but it's always been there, and it hurts. Yeah, but it's always been there. Well, it hurts. Yeah, it's one of those kind of things. So,
weren't there cases of military members using sawed-off shotguns in various times during war? As in, like, people who were riding around in the Jeeps, they needed something small that they could just kind of carry?
Well, you can't go into Vietnam when we're talking about something that happened in 1939, but you can go backwards to stagecoaches and things where they did have, like, stagecoach guns or whatever, stagecoach guns. But
once the military uses it, it becomes a military arm, which therefore nullifies their argument.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't. I understand what you're saying, and I'm not trying to debate you. I'm just saying that it happened in 19.
I'm sorry if I'm being combative.
No. That's you're 100% accurate, and it's frustrating as hell. That's why I said 1939 is annoying, because you're right, and we're still sitting here in 2020. So I don't know how to answer that either. There is no answer other than you ask somebody about 1939 Miller, and they go, both sides won. That's basically what you're going to get at the end of a discussion with somebody. But you're going to talk to them for an hour before they end up with both sides take it as a win. And it's not that both sides actually won. Both sides view it as a win. And unfortunately, if you talk to somebody who's adamantly anti-gun, they look at Miller as justification for their positions.
Exactly. You can easily debate that against them. But Walt, I'm glad you brought the Miller case up, because it does prove something. Every time the court makes a decision, whether it's a valid decision or not, depending on personal viewpoint, and I'll get into that later. But every time the court makes a decision, it sets precedent, right? So every time they set precedent against themselves, we can use that as ammunition against them.
We should be able to just have it been like money on the table, right?
If only we had some case in like 2016 that, had a really, really solid originalist ruling on what the Second Amendment meant, and we could just use these two rulings in conjunction for some legal argument against the NFA. I mean, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Well, why don't we look at cases when it comes to other rights, such as the First Amendment, where they say that, what was the example I read once? And correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but basically it was the whole fire, if you yell fire in a movie theater, right? They held that you have the right to yell fire in a movie theater, but any damages that result in it are you. So you have the right to do whatever you want. And so for the Second Amendment, that says you have the right to own and carry whatever you want. But if you cause damage, I don't know. That's just kind of my spitball there. But if anyone wants to take that up.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, a lot. That's pretty much, at least the people that are down for constitutional carry, like that interpretation of the Second Amendment, then that's how everybody, I think that's how everybody feels, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're only liable for the damages you do. You're not allowed to harm other people, right? We have various Enlightenment era ideas devoted to that. That is kind of the core of the personal freedom idea that we were founded upon. So, absolutely, arguments from other constitutional amendments work. Which, for the record, we could be going after like a lot of 9th and 10th Amendment arguments. We could be going after a lot of 4th Amendment arguments. We could be going after, and we just choose not to talk about those 14th Amendment arguments possible. Like there is a number of creative arguments that are theoretically possible that we just don't pursue because we cling very much so to the language of the Second Amendment.
Unless I'm wrong, it takes an individual to be wronged or something need to be, focused on a case for some of these constitution or some of the Bill of Rights things to be focused on, basically to talk about them. They're theoretical. Second Amendment, unlike the first, which, a church is physical manifestation, a gathering is a manifestation, art, I guess, right? But speech, right? You start getting into the cerebral and theoretical or whatever the words are. But Second Amendment is a is a piece of stuff, like it's property, right? It's a little bit different in the respects that it's a piece of property and it emboldens and empowers the individual, and at the same time it creates peacefulness, right? It creates a land where the biggest don't just take from the littlest, or the ones with don't take from whoever they feel like, because they can't, right? So I think that's why the first we have an opportunity when we, that's why I'm an advocate of the first. I could have been an advocate of any of the others, right? It's not like the first affected me or something anymore. I feel that it's the manifestation, a physical manifestation of our individual rights and the liberty that allows us all to work together, right? To have our individual rights. So when we as individuals can help everyone figure out, move the Overton window, like explain to them, show through example that guns are just a thing, and you can have just as much faith, and you should have just as much justifiable faith in your neighbor or some you don't know with a firearm, the same way you do with poison and with sharp things. And every time they go up and there's a distance you could fall and hurt yourself, or a vehicle, or name any other dangerous thing that we are, again, have ultimate faith in each other. This is just something that's been manipulated because it's so important by people who want to see us take ourselves apart, people who know they can't take us down, not, come and fight, but just they don't have any other way to do it. But by using this one particular, like catalyst, cleavage, like this one crack, which also happens to be our lance and our sword and our armor. So, it's something that we can all stand behind. I'm a single issue person because of that. And I'm even more justified. At first, some of this you have to take in faith, because I'm down with taking things at faith, right? But when I read those comments at random, unless the world's out to get us and they just only put the most awesome comments out there for some freaking war, Star Wars level game of Star Trek chess, then we're all fucked. But basically, I got more confidence and faith in anybody, or in all of us, than ever after reading those comments. So I'll shut up and quit reading, or quit ranting.
One of my favorite amendments to talk about, and it is germane to this discussion, absolutely, is the Fourth Amendment. So, Walt, jump in because you're more of a scholar than I am, but it's my impression that things have shifted from the original interpretations and the long-standing interpretations of the Fourth Amendment to require not only sworn, but reasonable and without suspicion kind of thing, testimony offered to enable the appropriate judge to issue a warrant in order to effect a search and potentially a seizure. And now it seems to me that the Supreme Court is, courts are coming down far more often on the side of, well, you have to prove that your shit was violated. Not that we didn't go about doing it the right way, but did you were your rights actually, was your Fourth Amendment right actually violated? And then the other amendment that I want to talk about is not unreasonable search and seizure, but unreasonable tax. And that's what we get with, and I was talking about hearing protection. That's what we have with with suppressors right now. That's what we have with other things related to firearms. So, Walt, kick off from there, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there to react to. Yeah, there's a lot of possible arguments. So, yeah, the Fourth Amendment is probably a stronger appeal for probably my primary appeal during a red flag confiscation, because due process is just utterly ignored. The law is not what gets to prescribe due process by itself. This is what I think is coming from a philosophical angle, as a kind of a quasi legal philosopher in training here. But my opinion is that the law needs to interact with an ethical basis and maintain being ethical in order to do so, meaning that law has to exist in a constitutional way. So a really long way of getting to unconstitutional laws don't count. So swing at the Fourth Amendment first. Hey, look, there was no due process. Why was there no due process? Well, because prior to levying some punishment against me, I have a right to, one, you don't get to just search and seize my stuff. Two, I have a right to a trial by the jury of my peers. I have a right to appear there. Now, the issue that we're going to run into is with a lot of preconceived notions that we have to be willing to abandon. So to DJ's point, this is the gambit. These are the sacrifice plays that we have to make. There are certain movements out there that have called these things into question, that have done a great amount of the work for us. And whether or not we agree with them, we should give credit where it's due. So I'm going to say some very unpopular things right now. Black Lives Matter, the whole ACAB thing that they've been pushing really hard, Antifa, the thing that they've been pushing with ACAB and defund the police, all of this stuff that we've been seeing from the left that's anti-establishment works to our gain. The reason that it works to our gain is that it's demonstrating, one, law enforcement is not there to save you. Law enforcement is incapable. Law enforcement is busy protecting themselves. It's making that painfully obvious. The second thing that I want to bring up with that is also that it points out the abuses by police, because it's not the military who are coming for your guns. It's going to be police. It's going to be the ATF. It's going to be like California DOJ, those types of organizations. That's who we see do it now with red flag laws. So we need to make sure that we can leverage those narratives. And this is why I reach out across the aisle as much as I do, because there's a massive sentiment there of taking back control from the government. And the firearm is the ultimate tool, the ultimate symbol of being able to do that and protect yourself. So that's why I kind of focus on the angle that I do. So we need to be able to look at a lot of these things that we don't like, or that we may not like. And we have to be willing to say, you know what? I should piggyback. I should work off of that. I should use that momentum and ride that wave. So it's unpopular. It's something that I think is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's kind of a hot take again, but that's kind of my position. I think that we should leverage all momentum moving forward, because it does open up some interesting plays, and it opens up the public's eyes to some of these other arguments off of other constitutional amendments, to kind of bring it back to that point.
I agree with you there, Walt. Actually, on my Facebook, I'm with a former coworker I'm friends with. He's very, very pro 2A, but I've been trying to hammer home the point with him that, like, I posted something, and he knows I'm very, very, not very, very anti-Trump, but not very pro-Trump, especially on Second Amendment issues. And he just automatically assumes I'm a Biden supporter, which I'm not. But he commented on one of my Facebook posts, and he said, so what are you going to do when Biden comes to take your guns? And what are you going to do then with the red flags? I'm like, well, because he's very, very pro-police. I said, well, if they come, it's going to be the police. So I definitely agree with you on that aspect right there.
All of these reforms, by the way, that they're asking for with the police also work to our gain, because these reforms are showing that decriminalization is going to be the more effective approach long-term to anything. And right now, so many of the firearms that we're interested in freeing up for the American people to consume once again, to be able to use and own and enjoy, have been prohibited items, right? Like under the NFA. So like, we want you to be able to recreationally own a machine gun. Go shoot it. There's literally no data indicating that that's a danger, right? So we need to make sure that we leverage these pushes on decriminalization and anti-authoritarianism, because they're popular. They're in with the as G would say, it's what's cool with the kids these days. We should absolutely be throwing these monkey wrenches into that anti-gun narrative, because they're not ready to deal with that. Like, could you imagine, like,
it comes to bring in that ammunition to the fight, so that they're aware that, like you said earlier, like hitting them from all angles or hitting them with every means possible, so that they're overwhelmed. And, instead of just coming up and saying no, because.
Yeah, like the military and police have been notorious on the left. Like the perception there is that the military and police have crushed every single leftist revolution with force, even peaceful ones, where they're just simply trying to exist on their own. That's how they see it. So wouldn't you want to be armed if you're on the left? And wouldn't you have a pretty radical pro 2A stance? And I would even go so far as to say there's many people on the left. If you push all the way into Socialist Rifle Association, you'll find people that are way more extreme on 2A than a lot of the people on the right that we work with. Yeah. So, we have to kind of tap these different powers. And one final thought I'll throw at you. Could you imagine the fervor of, like, let's just say like Antifa, right? like the Black Bloc protesters. Could you imagine the fervor of them protesting against Moms Demand Action in a counter protest? Like, I would love to see that, right? And this is something where, hey, like, look, these are neoliberal anti-gun activists who seek to destroy your civil liberties. You need to go out there and protest them. So, you know, there's partnerships in strange places that we might be able to make if we're willing to open our eyes to them, work across the aisle, and adequately represent some people's interests. I understand, again, this is going to be distasteful for a lot of folks out there, but that's the hot take. If we want to win, we need to make plays, like, bottom line. So let's make plays. I
agree, Walt. We need to get out of this partisan bias that is prevalent on both sides.
Absolutely. I've been saying that for this whole last year. This is, 2A is not a partisan issue. We are citizens. We are the government, as a matter of fact. Hitting up the 9th Amendment real quick, it's like, just because it's not in the Constitution does not mean we don't have the right to something. And that's why, we have these long and codified strings of laws and regulations and everything else. But remember, that should remind us all that the rights of the people we are the government. The government is not us, is what I'm trying to say. And it's not eloquent at all.
Yeah, no, we ought to be, we are the government, right? We are the ones in charge of our government. They are on my payroll, your payroll, all of our payroll here. We pay our taxes, we pay their salary, they belong to us, they represent us, they work for us.
Right. And they seem to forget that and use partisanship to further that end.
We don't want to be unrealistic and ignorant. So what the mechanics are. So it's a mechanical system, and if you allow someone else to sit in the driver's seat of a bulldozer, you'd be dumb to be upset that the blade of the bulldozer keeps knocking things over, right? And to be creating strategies to deal with the blade of the bulldozer. I don't know if I'm saying it eloquently, but it's our system. So if we just look at the system as the adversary, then number one, we aren't realizing that we have the ability to vote in different drivers of this thing, but we also understand that there's a human driving it and they decide what they're going to aim that thing at. And we built the thing for a reason. If they're inadvertently driving it at us, we can continue to fight the person who's sitting there or the people that put them there, or we can do as they did with the Overton window effort additionally, not instead of, but additionally at changing the perception of those people that put them in there. So there's many levels we can go at, is I guess what I'm saying. So, it's not, I don't want to get into this position where, we only look at it in a narrow scope, I guess, and be just tactically not aware and strategically just spending our resources not efficiently.
Yeah, and that's why I think we ought to pick up all these new resources, right? That's why we need to be working and forming new coalitions. We need to be finding anyone who's willing to work towards the objective and leveraging our influence to help direct them that way to the best that we can.
Except for the new part. I mean, I you know me, I'm all about whatever's next and to keep evolving. However, I don't like rebuilding mousetraps either. So when we say new, I think of that. I hear that. So I've been hearing that. I yelled it and I petitioned it and I did it. And then now I'm older and I'm like, uh-oh. If everything's new all the time, the other side wins because you're always new, right? Like, yeah, I hear you. Sometimes there has to be a new thing sometimes, but let's not forget and acknowledge, like, the NRA. Let's all do all this stuff forgetting that we got this aircraft carrier that because some asshole drove it up on a shore somewhere or stuck it on a reef or whatever the hell you do in an aircraft carrier. Like, we're just going to ignore it that we got an aircraft carrier and the power that we could have. But since I got everybody, and if we're still awake, I had some other ones that I'd rather throw in here than we're kind of just delving into the first real question, which started with, was it a win? And what if it was an accident or a tactic against us? But I'm going to throw a little bit more out you and just a mess here, and y'all can pick it up now that we've got a conversation up and rolling. Let's remember that barbecue is on the clock and Woods is in here. They keep up to B2A. So some others are, well, we've kind of already talked about how to keep the momentum going, but then what about remembering today to make a poster or video to remind the future 2A activist you what today was like in your head in a way that you can compare today in a snapshot with then, whatever tomorrow or then is, so that I can give you, as somebody who's been through many, many cycles, some insight that you are in a cycle, and don't act like this is the first time or last time, or just with the awareness that this is the first time for you, but instead you're in a baton race or whatever that's called. Like, you ain't the first one and you ain't the last. You know, this ain't some movie where there's only going to be a focus on these three things. I mean, this is a long run. So, you know, something about that baton has to be instructions to the next 7 people. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge our accomplishments and stuff. But how can you as people, because I can mansplain the shit out of it and make you and mope at you until you do it. But all I can say is there something that you guys can do and gals can do to let your future activist selves know G-Webs was saying something about this, and I don't want to have to live through it 17 times like him and get all crotchety when I'm old and tell this to youngins. I want to be able to know this right from the beginning. And then what would have been today been like with a different outcome? What if we didn't get it repealed? What would we be doing right now? And is there value in remembering that just because they stopped the fight, doom on them for telling us when we fight and when we don't? Like, should we be stopping? And I don't want to fight through Christmas. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but is there value in appreciating? And I'm trying to think of the art of war too. And I'm just bad at remembering it. So I'm glad I got people in here who understand and can also focus on that. But that's basically the kind of shit I'm getting at. I'll quit throwing shit out there just so that we keep the conversation at the next level and evolving instead of just whatever. I'll shut up, go. All that stuff. Let's solve it. Done.
I vote that Woods goes first.
Okay, I'll take a swing. I think we should all effort in trying to get rid of the NFA itself, because we all just spent a bunch of time honing our arguments. A lot of us looked into what the NFA really was. I mean, shit, before this last week, I didn't really read it. I knew what it was, but I didn't realize that like short barrel shotguns are illegal because of some weird perception that bad guys were going to use them all the time, and short barrel rifles. And that was just a perception. It wasn't even a fact. And from then till now, 70 years later, bad guys really don't use sawed-off shotguns. They just don't.
It sounds to me like a lot of deep dives just happened, and I do this all the time. I try to record it either on a website or in a video, but maybe some sort of collaborative. Let's all record what our deep dives found out or something and figure out what else can come of that, or how we can take 6 things from that one and 7 things from that one and turn it into a deep dive that we didn't even know we accomplished together.
Well, I think we can all agree that the NFA, at least from my opinion, so I guess maybe not all of us agree, but the NFA was brought along because the U.S. government could not come to terms with the fact that it had caused the rise in the mafia due to bootleg alcohol when it outlawed alcoholic beverages.
When you say that it caused to somebody like me, I hear a kid who thinks that the government's out to get him. So when the actions that the government was in charge of at the time, so, you know, however you want to better say that, but they left room for opportunity because the gangsters did. Like, I'm just saying, just interrupting you, which is rude or whatever, but just a FYI. I heard that.
It's okay. I'm really bad about it.
No worries. I'll shut up. If you got it, then I don't need to harp on it.
Well, I was just going to say, for example, look at today's world with the drug war. The government, our elected officials decided that things like marijuana, cocaine, whatever, all those drugs, all the drugs, right? They're all bad for you. You shouldn't take them. So what they decided is we're going to make them all illegal. Now, their logic is, from a altruistic point of view, is that if they ban them, nobody's going to do them. But what do we have today? We have a heroin epidemic. I wouldn't say epidemic. That's
a massive failure of their intent. Right?
Yes, a massive failure on the part of the supposed law that was supposed to prevent these things from becoming a problem. So during the you see that same thing mirrored during Prohibition era, where alcoholism was still a thing and was a very profitable endeavor, which led to the rise of mafias. So it's the same thing we make the arguments with guns, that if you make, I'd say, AR-15s illegal, only the criminals will have AR-15s, right? But sorry, I'm scatterbrained. So
No, I think that when Walt was talking about the recreational machine guns, that's where I was thinking too. It's like, man, it seems like how can they line up that they're okay with what was a dangerous drug 5 minutes ago being recreational, but somehow in that same world, this is not okay to be recreational and it's dangerous.
Well, the NFA was brought around because of, if I'm not mistaken, anybody can correct me, like I said before, the NFA was brought around because of the Valentine's Day massacre with Al Capone and etc. So they said, well, we got to make these firearms illegal, right? The Tommy guns, etc. And yet, would it really have affected those criminals? No, it wouldn't have, because they had the funds to make sure they would get their hands on those if they needed them. Meanwhile, poor people, which is really what it was aimed at, couldn't
And
get their hands on
minorities.
it because, and minorities, that is definitely true. That is definitely true. Could not get their hands on it because of financial barriers. But it was supposed to protect the public, right? Well, if it didn't protect the public from people like gangsters who could get their hands on it, what was the fucking point? But
Well, I don't know.
I
Like,
got way off topic what I was trying to say.
fine. Unless somebody's got something, because I just kind of threw a bunch of stuff out there. But that, when you said that, it made me think about the first gun laws in the city. Well, we're from a city, from New York. But if you think about it, before that, out west, when the Western expansion happened, or when you got freed slaves live in places where, who knows, right after emancipation, where people who they come across, who knows, they don't. It's not the freed slaves' obligation to know the mindset of some person who comes, into their path. So, there's all these places where could have been all kinds of, what do you call it, like the cartel life in Mexico now, or the organized crime owns a town or something, or the robber baron, or I don't know the names of all the bad guys back in the movies and stuff, but all those situations that happened were eliminated with the proliferation of the individual right, well, the ability for individuals to carry firearms. We had the right from the beginning of the country, but it wasn't until Sam Colt, right, made a practical cartridge-fired, well, he made a practical revolver. I guess it wasn't until Smith & Wesson technically made a cartridge-fired revolver, but and then Browning eventually made a pocket-sized semi-auto. But it wasn't until basically our grandmothers and our anybody back in the day who felt the need to be self-sufficient was able to put something into their pocket that kept them free from a bad guy or a critter or whatever else, just being lost somewhere, all the different things that the tool of a gun can bring. So those things were established. Like, they knew that an individual's right to have access and use the firearm as a tool provided a calm, peaceful environment, because you couldn't run a town when, as a criminal element, when the whole town could say no, right? You could have a bad thing happen, but when anybody could stop it, you didn't have to wait for police. A criminal element couldn't just abuse a town so easily, unless, of course, the town inadvertently put up rules to prevent innocent, regular people from stopping what they saw as atrocities or whatever. But anyway, so you get New York creating these laws, and I don't know enough about this, but I think the way it went down is you got bad, representatives who were effectively gang bosses who were, elected, and they said, oh, you know what? I don't want anybody owning guns and saying no to my thugs. Like, let's make it so you can't have guns. And then other cities went, oh, that sounds great in theory. So when you say, they created these laws and stuff because of the Valentine's Day massacre, I suggest that something was at stake, and or something else was at, at hand. And then they used the Valentine's Day massacre as a catalyst. And they said, they were thinking, hey, these things have worked here, although it's not part of the Constitution, but now we have this excuse. So I think, again, not putting tinfoil hat on it, but I just think the bigger concept of, let's try to do what they did in New York on a grand scale. And if enough people weren't paying attention to go, hell no, then that's what happened. It happened. And now there's this big experiment that we've had to live with forever.
Well, gee, when I was saying the Valentine's Day massacre, I was referring specifically to the NFA. But I went on a trip to Wyoming, well, technically to Montana, Jesus. but I passed through Wyoming, and on my way back, I stopped by the Cody Firearms Museum. And when I was perusing through, they actually had a display for firearms regulations in this country. And if I'm not mistaken, the first firearms regulations were in the Carolinas. I can't remember if it was north or south, but it was around the time that black folk were afforded citizenship. And that since then, I have had the opinion that all firearms laws originally, like regulations and such, originally stemmed from racism. And with the Gilded Age and the poor masses rising up against the corporations, then stemmed into classism. But if I'm wrong on that, anyone, I guess I can correct me. But
No, you're with it, dude.
Gee, don't you have a video about the Cody Museum?
No, Cody Museum, I'm not a fan of. I've only been there the one time in person, and they were closed for remodeling and didn't have any guns out.
did you at least stop at the old, what is it? The Dug Up Gun Museum? That's the
That
one
one,
off the square.
I have the opposite opinion of that one. That's one of my favorite museums. Yeah,
That place
was
is awesome. I love that fucking place.
It was closed for the season, and I didn't realize. And I got there like days after they closed, so it wasn't like that long. But they were definitely closed, and I called and said what's up, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Let me wake up, and then I'll wake him up, and then we'll a couple hours we'll dust everything off and let you in." And yeah, that's what they did. So in that time, I went over to the Cody Museum, and they were like, "Oh yeah, here's $25 to get in or whatever." And there's 5 areas of the museum. The gun one is, I knew the gun one was closed because I already knew that. But I went in there. Little did I know, because they didn't say, that they pulled all the guns from the rest of the museum, along with the gun museum side being closed, so that there was no guns, period. All the other things had voids where the guns were, so that they could, hoard them or whatever they were doing. And then I know, as I was walking in, a whole family led by a grandmother walked in. Grandmother, grandpa, I can't remember anymore, some adult, and then a bunch of kids, all in one family, and bigger family too. Walked in, paid a lot of money to go in there. And the way you walk in, you've been there, you walk in, you take a right, and you go right. I mean, you're in here, you take a right, and you're in the gun part. They did that. They walked in, took a right, no hesitation. They've been there before. Walked in, took a right, opened their eyes, and went, "What happened? How come there's nothing here?" And they went, "Yeah, it's the gun stuff is, we're keeping that off limits, so you can't look at that right now." And they're like, "No, you can't have your money back." I'm like, "I'm leaving. I'm out of here." I didn't like that place real much. But anyway, they have they have the Winchester factory stuff. So all the stuff that came from Browning that went to Winchester as patents, they have all that. The Smithsonian gave them a bunch of stuff. They have a lot of interesting guns from this country. But I wish I would have known they had I wouldn't have been able to see it, but because when did you go there? Since the remodel or after or before the remodel?
I don't know when the remodel was, but I went there in 2018, I believe. Because it was.
So I would have been there in 18, in November of 18, and it was closed then. So you had to be there earlier.
It had to be 2019 then, because it was before COVID. So because I wanted to go back to Montana this year. So yeah, it would have been 19. My apologies, 19.
Did it all look fancy and nice, or did it all look like it needed to be updated?
It was pretty nice looking. They did have some interactive equipment there that was pretty cool. I don't know if.
Oh, good. Then whatever then everybody can see. It's not like you
they had some. What do you call it? Simulated firearms there, where it would kind of give you a recoil feel when you fired. It was really cool, but for example, it projected onto a screen that you could shoot at, and it would supposedly report your shots. It actually reminds me a lot of when I was in ROTC in college. When we went to Fort Hood, they had a very similar setup there, but I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, it was actually really freaking awesome. So.
Well, we went off all kinds of talk.
Can I throw a curveball?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, I was thinking back to just when Cobalt was talking about the drug war, and I had just kind of an interesting analogy that kind of I think can segue into my overall thoughts on today for me, and then I'll probably sign out off the chat here and go to bed. But imagine back when marijuana was widely criminalized, right? Not just federally, because it still is, right? But by pretty much every state in the union, right? And so people would smoke marijuana, right? And they would do that because they felt like it had medicinal benefits, it helped them relax. It was recreational. They had all kinds of great reasons why they might want to smoke weed. And those were personal reasons, and weed was relatively harmless, but the government decided to restrict it anyway for a series of arbitrary political reasons, and that we don't have to get into. But some people out there decided to do CBD instead, because CBD is not marijuana. It can be a byproduct of it, but CBD gives a lot of relaxation benefits, things like that. And so a lot of people started using CBD as a workaround to get some of the benefits that marijuana offers in areas where marijuana is not legal. Now, I think this could be used to draw an analogy for this pistol brace situation, and I wish that I thought of this earlier. Imagine if the DEA decided, after all of the laws and everything deciding what marijuana was, how marijuana was classified.
Oh, Walt, why didn't you come up with this one?
I know, right? This is how I'm gonna. This is. I'm
God
gonna
damn
say
it, Walt.
this.
Money, Walt. Jeez.
Imagine if, for all of those laws that classified marijuana exactly how it was, now suddenly included CBD products because the DEA said so, and you were going to have to try your rights in a criminal court to see if that ruling was false, and the DEA gave you an option to comment on that and say, is this bullshit?
Not only did you should feel bad because you didn't bring that up like Sunday, and we could have just ended this Sunday and enjoyed our week, but now I feel worse about those comments that I read because nobody brought that up. Now I feel like maybe we are dumb. Like, damn it! Like everything's lost.
Don't worry, G. They're gonna bring it back to us again. We're gonna fight this again, so we can use it then.
Okay.
We learned their tactics in the first place, and we have discovered new tactics to fight them. This is actually pretty fucking great.
That's exactly why I wanted to do an advanced class and not just pat ourselves on the back and cheer and giggle and talk about something, whatever we missed, right? Because that's ideally like you couldn't have left on a better. So I guess I just wanted to kind of end with how this segues into my thoughts, because I've been working so much across the aisle, and I'm willing to kind of abandon labels and abandon names. I let people just kind of say, I am what I am, and I'm not Jesus or anything. I don't mean to invoke anything biblical with that. Just, you can call me whatever you want. But I'm realizing that I have an immense frustration with myself as I continue to move forward and trying to help create some bridges here for us. And I'm finding that with me, there's a few particular things, and then I start to see them in other people. You know what I mean? Like when you're angry at yourself, but you kind of project it. And so one of those things is that I see people on like the right. I am overwhelmed by my anger at intolerance on the right to be allied on this cause with anybody. And that's one of the biggest obstacles that I face. And I reflect back on that. And I think, I think about how I would have distanced myself from so many things in the past. But then as I've kind of thought about what's going on more, I realized that's not an option. But then also how like some of the content that I've put out could have created that division, and that's something that sits with me. I think the other thing where I find myself being angry is with people on the left, in the same turn. And I'm not a centrist or anything, but like I'm angry with people on the left who don't have the courage. And this isn't like saying everybody on the left or everybody on the right, just those people, but the people that don't have the courage to come out and say, I'm a proud gun owner and I support Second Amendment rights, that are there because they are there and they are prevalent. And they do that out of fear for a whole bunch of legitimate reasons, just like the right has a very strong fear of socialism for a whole bunch of legitimate reasons. And we don't have to touch on all those today, but just
not being able to see what's going on for what it is because we're so distracted by our own fears and we get so inside our own heads. And that pisses me off. And that's been I think the motivation for me to move forward and to try to create better stuff and to try to engage harder and more aggressively. It's kind of centered on bullying myself to be better than what I want other people to be. And it's kind of a weird way of looking at it, but it's like a weird kind of competition with myself that I find myself in. And that win today, it was weird to win and then get angry. That was the thing that kind of clicked for me today. It was just a very strange thing because we won a battle, but then I realized, I started seeing everybody say woo we won on YouTube, and no one's talking about, like, no one that I saw, like none of the mainstream guys that I saw were talking about it's not over yet.
Right on.
No one objected when I said, hey, it's not over yet. Keep commenting until it's closed. Keep doing your part until it's closed. If you haven't done it yet, do it. No one objected, but no one pushed it either. You know what I mean? And I noticed that, and that pissed me off. So,
okay, hold on.
So I'm just
not to interrupt you, because that's awesome. I appreciate that you're willing to say that, because if other people have bottled that up over the years, that's why we haven't moved on. So, first off, I don't think you're wrong in questioning that, and I hope there's other people out there that are the same, because I can tell you for a fact that you're not alone, right? And I can tell. I mean, I wish I could read off the names. I just can't. I don't have enough capacity to read. I'll remember all the people that had similar, that would have expressed exactly the same frustration and situation. However, I can tell you that from somebody who's had that same mindset for a while, you're looking at it from your snapshot, right? Whatever it is, your length of time on the clock or what.
Oh, totally.
It's definitely moving. We're having this conversation with a bunch of people. That fact is that it's not happening, right? So that's, if nothing else, but this has to be an indication that others, because I know that I'm not as good as some of these other people that are doing stuff. So yeah, there's definitely this conversations and more that are happening. Now, we aren't in some sort of Voltron mode where, whoever the head Voltron's telling everybody else what to do, and we all come together and become Voltron monster when we need to. But I don't know if I don't think anybody, you're not saying that either, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not happening. But we're certainly moving in a direction towards that awareness. But also keep in mind, there's also, you're looking at it, your past is people that are gone, and I'm looking at it as trends with people coming up to bat or new team members or whatever. And I don't know if you're putting that into the game, but the new team members aren't the same as the people that you're looking at in history. So we're definitely getting new players to the game, and that'll switch stuff up. Unfortunately, it's going to bring new adversaries, or fortunately, whatever, but it's going to bring new adversaries. So it's not like it's a done deal, but I hear what you're saying, and don't be discouraged at all. Like, I don't think you're alone. If there's anybody else out there that's listening, let us know. So otherwise, we're just going to shut it down, because I don't think anybody's chatted since it took almost an hour there for people to chat something. But anyway, I don't know if anybody else, I cut you off there because that was a great sentiment. And like I say, I just long-windedly said, keep going, because you're definitely hitting the game at the right time. But anybody else wants to throw in on that, feel free.
Yeah, on that note, I'll keep listening to you guys, but I'm going to sign out. You guys have a fantastic night.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Go easy,
bro.
Anybody want to throw in on that? Anybody else?
Well, I've definitely come across some self-realization that I'm not necessarily happy with, and I can only say to those gathered here and others in my daily life that I'm just doing my best to go forth and fuck up no more, kind of thing. Self-forgiveness is really, really hard when you're in what you think is a group of your peers, and you realize that your own limitation, you've been blind to a lot of your own limitations. And, and I guess another thing that I would like to say about some of what Walt was talking about was, in these bipartisan efforts, we have to remember, and those of us living in the era of AIDS can certainly, that nobody wants to be outed. People want to be able to come out on their own, if ever at all, and we need to respect that. So it's okay that most of us know a hell of a lot more folks who have what others would consider contrary on both sides of the aisle, because that's reflective of our true nature and our composition as a citizenry. So support is the best thing to offer folks, and time. So that's what I'm endeavoring to do. Not that I was calling out a bunch of people, but just that I made some realizations about my approaches. I was being way more vinegar than honey when I should have just been neutral or some other kind of compliment.
Well,
as long as I don't have to use the mantra.
Guns and barbecue. I had talked about this in one of our chats once about leading a horse to water and not making it drink. That all we can do is offer counter arguments to whatever preconceived notion they might have on whatever we debate, whether it's guns, whether it's economics, whatever. Doesn't really matter. All we can do is try to let them see a different side, not pick their side for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I don't want to put words in Barbecue's mouth, but I have heard Barbecue's words in other live streams where he's a guest panelist. He's not out in the text chat. This guy is throwing his voice out there, and shall remain nameless, but lives in Indiana, the epicenter of dirt drugs, for God's sake. And here he is trying to say, well, wait a minute. He's trying to get people to pause for a moment and consider. And all he was doing was hitting walls. People were throwing up stop signs left and right. I wasn't a voice guest, so I had to do what I could in the comments. But it was equally vociferous in its refusal. I mean, outright, abject refusal to budge that anything related to drugs is going to be okay for citizenry. And we are a nation addicted to prescriptions. So there are a bunch of people in that chat, and another one that comes out of the Midwest that I know, because they have said as much, gobble prescriptions every day. Who are we to judge others for what works for their physiology, their physiognomy, and their mental health? Back it off and let live.
Amen to that.
I think my final thought is it's going to be personal to Gigi. It was really cool to watch you be inspired yesterday.
Yeah, definitely interesting. But like I say, now that it's changing again, what I was reading yesterday was what I thought was the beginning of whatever, let's say it's just 15 days or whatever. Who cares what the actual days are now, right? But what I thought was a couple of weeks worth of wrapping around Christmas, having to probably justify or offer encouragement or I don't necessarily offer insight other than create rooms like this where other people can come in and offer insight, because I can't keep track of every tactic. I'm happy to just see people efforting towards it, but we as a group, we would have to try to do all of those things to either all the people that are uninformed or unaware or on the fence or unconvinced, or all the different facets, right? So I was looking at it as, let's do something without any goal in mind other than to add something new and different, I guess, right, to the effort this time that we didn't have as a tool last time, especially because circumstances are different with the holiday and with wins and losses and with new players. So when I went at it as all of that, and again, like what was that, Tuesday of the beginning of the first of 2 weeks where it was about to get crazy, and we know there's other things going on. This is already diverting people who would consider themselves 2A that live in Georgia are immediately conflicted. They immediately have two things they need to, they might feel they need to do. So anyway, I knew that, all of that stuff was on going into it. And then of course the Bloomberg plant, right? The whole phenomenon of like somebody decides, oh, here's somebody attempting something in front of me. That can't happen. Like, hell no. Like, like, I gotta do something about this. As if, you know, when they see a car driving by, they wing stuff at it. And when they're, you know, they just drive it. Like, I can't think of anything else where, you know, somebody just pursues something for the sake of either vandalism or intentional distraction. So, you know, with that whole element the day before, like, that was going into when I was going to do that. I'm like, now I know I'm under attack by whatever. Like, you know, I'm an innocent under attack by a savage group of, I don't know, probably highly paid, you know, effective Bloomberg plants. Like, that was, you know, I figured my life was at risk. So I had a lot of stuff going on going into that chat. And yeah, and then I picked a bunch of random ones because I had no idea how to pick random ones. I'd never done that before. And then to experience that, it was crazy. And I went back and watched it a little bit, and it was because it was nothing but nonstop. I don't know, say it was more and more nuance and more effectiveness. Like having that one guy who was you know, bringing the insight as an officer into the idea that what they're creating from their point of view as an officers, right? You're creating stuff that's going to put people in danger. You're going to put stuff that creates a situation where we're going to be looked at in a way. Like those ATF officers know what it's like to be in the position of being looked at as jackboots. And very few of them, I suspect, actually decided to be jackboots, right? If they really wanted to be jackboots, they'd move to some country where that's a big thing, or they would, I don't know, be in jail, or, you know what I mean? Like, they wouldn't be reading memos. I just don't think the jackboots are really, you know what I'm saying? I think that they get that perception because they're following through a bunch of assholes on stupid crap, or, I don't know, I'm not justifying their jackbootery, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think that, I was like, oh, that was, I was expecting a lot different selection of stuff. And then, anyway, I guess I was explaining the articles, and then that's when it just blew me away. It literally blew me away. And then, so today, it's a different thing because all these things that we started with are we being played? Like, that's a quick end to it. You know, it's like coming full barrels at Christmas, like, you know, like all of a sudden it's like you're getting that no-knock raid, and then you wake up and go, oh, what? No. And then they go, oh, okay, yeah, sorry. And a no-knock raid at 2 a.m. with bells and whistles and dogs barking just went silent. That'd freak the shit out of you, wouldn't it? Like, that's what's going on right now. So I'm not singing no song that we won. I'm not suggesting that we are being played, but damn it, effers, like what the F, right? So I don't know. I planned fully to go. I had planned to go live today, except for that we won, right? I was planning to go live today and do that again better because like I say, I realized after it that when I clap, it just sounds like I'm beating the wall or something here. And I'm pretty sure it sounded like I stopped to, you know, to take a break in the middle of it, but that's not what was happening here. I was just not expecting to be hit with that. So many of those like effective articles, like it just gave me such a rush of, I don't know what, that it was just very difficult to read out loud for a while there. And then once I figured it out, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. I'm an American and these are a bunch of Americans doing American stuff. Like, I don't, you know, I was, I don't know. Anyway, so once I got through all that, I was like, all right, whatever. So I figured I'm going to go on tonight, just do it right. Like now I'm not, nothing can stop me right now. I'm not going to be caught off guard. I'll just do a better professional read, right? Then there's no need to. So what I'm thinking is we do this, which is an opportunity to bring it to the next level. So again, I appreciate everybody who's joined us tonight and been willing to do whatever the fuck, or whatever the hell it is we're doing here. I guess I can swear, Mocha. Do whatever the hell it is we're doing over here, or attempting to do, and allowing themselves to be part of the mess or the creation of the next. Because that's one of the things that I was going to break this thing up in a second here, or a minute ago. I didn't want to interrupt you. But when you said all we can do is, no, there's always an option. You don't have to go down the ambush point. You know, you can always do a third thing. You can always question why we have to have this, but even besides questioning, you can always just, you can just do. You can do whatever it is you felt like doing in the first place, and then that example is an action. Like that can be effective. And I don't know, I'm bringing that up, and I don't remember what part of what you were bringing up there earlier, Cobalt, that I was going to bring that up to. But anyway, I think that what we're doing here, having a conversation that's alternative, it isn't just a repeat of a conversation after a win in past years. Hopefully this is the evolution. Hopefully people will see this and go, oh, next time this happens, I'm going to do this better. I'm going to have a better after action. You know, that's how it progresses, right? So anyway, I appreciate everybody for joining in and being part of it.
Before we go,
yeah,
I would like to say that in response to what you said about the former ATF officer actually bringing up his own concerns about it, I would love to see more comments like that, not only on like an ATF comment page, but just in general. Former law enforcement officers, whether they were local law enforcement, whether they're state, federal, whatever, please let your voices be heard, because in the firearms community, it is pretty common to think that, well, maybe not in the firearms community, but in some communities, it's very common to hear that law enforcement doesn't give a shit. They're just going to follow orders. And unfortunately, it's been proven true time and time again with things like red flag laws, where the law enforcement goes in there, and granted, it might be because they've been told, hey, this person is bad, you need to take care of them. But when it comes to things like that, please be the voice of dissent. Say, no, this isn't right, and give your reasons why, be it constitutional, moral, whatever. I mean, hopefully constitutional, because that really helps get rid of a lot of these laws that are in themselves unconstitutional. But remember your oath that you took when you became a law enforcement officer, you know, that you swore to uphold the Constitution and not carry out laws like that. Now, we saw some of that with or in Virginia, when they were doing we will not uphold these laws. A couple years ago with like VCDL and all that. But since then, very little has come down from that. We need more of that, and we need not just empty words, but actual, like, yes, I will put my job on the line. I will sacrifice my pension. I will sacrifice everything for this, because this is wrong. If we were to follow through with this, I would love to see more of that, because I can guarantee you there would be a lot more support for law enforcement that would actually hold to its own standards, rather than toe the line of whatever your superiors tell you to do.
Right on. Do you know a bunch of cops or anybody that works in like for the government, basically like in government jobs?
Unfortunately, I don't personally.
No worries. I'm just asking because what you're at, I mean, I don't disagree with you. That would be great. But when you're talking government jobs, well, when you first started talking about ATF agents, I was going to tell you, I knew a guy back in the day who was, I forget exactly what kind of federal agent he was, but he was something where he would be like weapons familiarization type of class or something. And he would always come into the gun shop and hang out and tell us stories about things. And he brought up a great insight one time that I never had thought about. But ATF is, a whole bunch of stuff: alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and now explosives, right? So he said that he'd found in his experience, this was years ago, but I'm assuming it's still today, people might join the Bureau because maybe they got some kind of a relationship with alcohol or tobacco, or they're a lawyer. There's like a lot of that government stuff is like lawyers and accountants and stuff like that. Like they have all these other things. And then the way government works is, in order to get a job or pension, or you want to move to Connecticut, or whatever those things come up, you end up sacrificing or changing or altering course, and now all of a sudden you're an ATF agent, or you could be an ATF agent, or you could be a bus driver and so. It's like, well, I guess I'm an ATF agent now. So it's not that all of them signed on to be, and it's not that all of them came to there in weird ways either. I'm sure there's plenty of them that were like, I want to be an ATF agent when I grow up. But I'm just saying, keep that in mind. But then the part when you brought up watching cops is interesting. It is. And if you don't know cops, and this is the worst part, when somebody does know a cop, like that's kind of the worst, because it's like knowing a teacher or a doctor, which it's like knowing a gun owner. guess what? You know what shotguns are like and what single action revolvers are like, because that's what that gun owner likes, right? But if you know a different gun owner, then you like something else, right? Maybe you like semi-auto shotguns and semi-auto revolvers. I don't know if it's not a thing, but semi-auto 22s or something. So, you know what I mean? Like, that's going to happen in all kinds of things. So if you know a cop who got his ass kicked by, you know, a female marijuana addict, he's probably going to hate marijuana addicts for his whole life, or hold it against females. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's got their thing. So what I've enjoyed is watching now that we've got the ability to see different individuals, not mainstream media or something with an agenda or somebody trying to sell a book, so asking the racy questions, but just regular people interviewing regular people, or people that maybe wrote a book or were involved in an incident. I think of that church in California that had horrible shit happen. And then as the guy ran out into his vehicle, the neighbor or something was grabbed a rifle in his bare feet and some loose ammo and took care of business. And then the people that interviewed that third party, that individual who helped the police be there at the right time and follow the guy and everything, listening to those interviews with that guy was better than anything you get on TV, right? So when I hear cops getting interviewed by regular people, retired cops or cops that maybe moved departments for whatever reasons they can talk about, or feel like they can talk about stuff, super interesting, because again, it's not like individuals are out to get us, and that's not a pass. It's just that bureaucracy is annoying, and it's a necessary thing for certain things, but the reason it's annoying, and the reason it's not a great thing, and the reason that I believe we should be concerned and skeptical of the whole damn thing, is because assholes get in there and they can hide in bureaucracy. Holy moly, there's so many ways, little corners and angles and shit and ledges and roofs and shit they can hide on, and they just sit there forever. People, when they're in the bureaucracy, are going to know to avoid that person or leave them alone, or something happens, there's consequences, and they usually get tossed up like, oh, that guy is just horrible, we can't get anything done, give him a raise, get him out of here, give him a promotion, because that's the only thing you can do to get them to leave, because they've got some sort of hold on the system. Whatever, it doesn't matter, there's all kinds of instances of that. So when people are dealing with that, yeah, they do things that they wouldn't want to do, but it's not a justification. It's just showing that there's a lot of layers to all of this. And somebody getting stuck in a place and doing a job doesn't mean that they signed on to give a shit about the Constitution. That's for damn sure. So somebody who decides to tell somebody to decide to do something is, probably supposed to be thinking of the Constitution and didn't. And then it grows. I'm trying to think of too many vague examples and it's not making sense, but all I'm saying is when you talk to the cops and listen to like their stories of how this went down or what really happened, you start to figure out that there's just every variety of like, actual intentional fuckery, which happens, and then circumstance and coincidence and accident, and then people grow and develop based on that, and there's all kinds of behind the scenes. So when you start to get into it, there's assholes and there's not assholes in the world, and some of them are cops and some of them ain't, some of them are in government, some of them ain't. And I think that's something that we all just have to, I don't really have to all nothing. I just think that's something that is a point to that, is that there's a whole bunch of stories there. So I don't try to judge anything or occupation or set of circumstances as if it's anything, because it's not necessarily coming to get you, and it might be coming to get you. So you don't, like the art of war, right? You don't want to play to either one, because if it is a good adversary that's acting like something else, then you've played right into that game, right? But if it is just a bad adversary, then you also have to.
Well, I mean, I wasn't necessarily trying to distract from our main topic of the 2A. But I kind of get what you're saying, and I can appreciate it. I think you and I may have slightly different views, but that's neither here nor there on law enforcement. But no, I can appreciate your point of view, and no, definitely, it does give me a different perspective to consider. So
yeah, they're basically they're a lot of government. They're not a lot of different from a cop. In some ways, there's not a lot of difference between a cop and a bus driver and a doctor and a librarian. Anybody who would get a job, who would take a job, I guess there's from this angle, anybody who would want a job with the government, having the government paycheck, that means you want like all kinds of stability and you're banking on the government you got to be big state because the big state's paying your pension. Like, you can't want the big state to fail because it's paying your pension. You know what I mean? So expecting someone who even wanted that job in the first place to be a libertarian, a raging libertarian, is unrealistic, and we can't
I
expect.
wouldn't say it's a raging libertarian. I would just say that, not expecting the system to fail, but the system to run properly. If the system starts running amok, then bad things ensue. But
no, that's all that's happened. Is I think it started running afoul a long time ago, and everybody just either ignored it or put duct tape on it or turned the radio up louder, and now it's just running horribly. Yeah, and we're dealing with
continues to happen. But we don't have to get into that. That's again not part of this chat, I don't think. But
I hear you. No, I think we're on the same boat for the most part. But like you said, it's just a different. It's more of a frustration type of conversation because you have less that you can do about that other than getting involved in politics, I guess, and being active.
Now, I'm sorry to throw back about 15 minutes, but dialogue's been good. One thing that occurred to me when we were talking about, some people, people assume that there's a predisposition because of a former job description that you're suited for something else, or that it's safe to assume that might be where you end up. Woods is going to be painfully aware of this as well, and I want him to check in because he's still in the field, and that is what in education is called the March of the Lemons. The March of the Lemons happens every year after teacher retirements, after reductions in staff, and after final disciplinary actions being taken at the tail end of the year in issues that they wished to avoid until school was out. This creates the lemons. The lemons exit their current place of employment, their classrooms, and they march simply to the next school. It can even be not necessarily within the same school district, but it could be same state, same county, same city, all kinds of other ways to find your employment with good speed, as a matter of fact, because the same districts that are in your area that just dumped a bunch of staff, they need to pick up fresh staff. So you have this phenomenon where you can get educators who will have to jump every 1, 2, 3 years for the rest of their miserable education lives. And the kids are done a disservice, therefore our society and our future is done a grave disservice. And these people that simply should be expelled from education remain. The same thing happens, I've seen and believe to be true in most jurisdictions, with police officers. Because you receive disciplinary action in Minnesota does not mean you can't just shift over to Wisconsin and start working for the state patrol. Conversely,
well, I know Yankee but brought that up in one of his videos or one of his chats, and he mentioned that they would just transfer to another department out of state or to a lesser known area.
Yeah, well, it's like sending somebody packing to, Siberia or, Alaska. We'll put you somewhere where we know that you might get in trouble, but no one else is going to have to see it, and we don't have to fire you. You're in exile, exactly. But these people manage to work their way back in so often, and it's disgusting. Now, if you're disbarred, if you're removed from the practice of medicine due to malpractice, you don't come back. You have to go to either pseudoscience or the lesser fields. You have to then turn into a chiropractor. Well, wait, no, they're licensed too. I don't know. I was trying to work with medicine. Maybe somebody else can work with law for me. But it's that same thing. Yeah, and the other thing is they take their show on the road internationally. I mean, please.
That explains why some of the teachers I had in public school disappeared.
Yeah,
that's a problem. But quite honestly, the media makes way bigger deal of that than that's been my experience. But I haven't worked in every school everywhere. But there's definitely the March of the Lemons. Like, they have to figure out what they're going to do to get rid of them. But also, principals talk amongst themselves, and they don't hire the ones that suck.
Yeah. Well, you have good administrators, and you have those corrupt administrators. I mean, I had some pretty admin.
Not any too many corrupt administrators. There are generally pretty great people that are really trying to do their best. That's more of a union problem than anything else. But that's a topic for like a whole other thing.
Because also that's like the difference between like they all sat around one day in 1940 and said, you know, it would be cool. Let's hire a bunch of inadequates, but then instead of firing them or holding them responsible for anything, we'll just transfer them around because that'll be fun. Instead, it was like a bunch of restrictions and requirements that were put on them, including you can't fire people without blah, 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 right? And then people, again, figured out like, oh, well, if I can do this and then I do this, they both can't fire me and have to pay me. And then, boom, you've created a situation through too many laws and loopholes and craziness that people fall into those slots, right? And then they monkey the system, however that's called, like manipulate, and then they're there. At least that's how I understand it. It's not like it was created, or it wasn't intentionally created. It happened, and now people are dealing with the what's it?
Yeah. The problem is when the lemons get into a position of power. I had a friend tell me a story about his school, which is basically in the same county as mine, it's completely opposite side of it. And granted, it was my friend's story, and I consider his stories to be face value stories, but he told me that in his school district, there were a group of teachers who all had children that went to that school, and they would modify grades to make their children look better. Well, the principal knew about it and turned a blind eye until a parent complained and went up the chain of command for the education system to our state education, whatever it is. I'm not well versed in it, but the Board of Education for the state, I guess, in Texas. And there was an actual investigation. I'm sorry?
You guys are huge, by the way. You set the tempo for textbooks in the United States.
Kind of. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. It's not my purview, but
yeah,
California more so. But okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Woods, you're right.
It's really just because they can sell a shit ton of. They have the California edition. But I guess my only point is just because I hear a lot of this as a teacher, and everybody can come up with like some anecdotal thing where the schools suck, but you got to also remember it's a juggernaut. You have like what 160 million kids going to school every day. Of course, there's going to be doing something shitty somewhere in it.
Well, absolutely. And Woods, I'm not trying to gain excess credibility, but both my parents were in education. One of my degrees is I just never practiced. So, and the other thing is not my personal educational experience in elementary, junior high, and high school, not here in the city, but there are 7,000 OPS, Omaha Public School employees. Now, that, of course, includes support staff of all the different types. But one of the things I think is awesome, but it means less and less as time advances, is that 60-something% of our public school teachers here have a master's or more, and they're not all just trying to get into grad school or administration. They're just continuing. Yeah. And English is the performance of writing arts, and my dad, that's my mom, and my dad, music. You have people who are essentially in practice constantly with their art and their craft that they get to expand on continuously as performers and individuals. Other teachers in their fields have the same opportunities. I'm just not as hip to them. I'm more interested in what my high school art teacher has on display, and what my former music teacher is doing in their church's vocal music program, that sort of thing, so that I don't go to the science fairs or, things like that. So yeah, please add something there. I rambled. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's just, I think schools get a bad rap a lot.
I agree. Too many people, too many parents
weren't just trying their ass off to do that. And I purposely work in some of the worst schools that we have around me. And, there's people working their ass off. I mean, the whole thing is complicated. We could have a whole show just on the problems in education, but let's not go too far down that road, because that's like turning the car around and going the other way for a while.
Yes, sir. I'll wrap my conclusion and ramble with, now screw it. Go ahead.
But I understand the March of the Lemons idea, that I have seen it, where shitty teachers, I can name some shitty teachers that still have a job because they've been at it so long. And do cops do the same thing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tenure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tenure of
I'll say this.
professors, that's not a real thing in regular kids school.
No. I mean,
I will say this,
concept's in place.
a good teacher that actually cares and wants to really educate their students goes a long way. Even if your curriculum is garbage, it really can go a long way. One of my favorite teachers was Mr. Wall in high school, and he really did actually care about his subject, which was history. And he was also very pro 2A, probably one of my guiding influences when I was growing up. But he really cared about his subject, and he really cared about his students. So it was actually a really good combination. But he also, because of that, I assume is why he won Employee of the Year award multiple times.
Right.
And this was in a small podunk town in North Texas. So, I mean,
yeah, people who remain passionate in their subject areas are going to be inspirational. They're high quality individuals.
I know more inspiring teachers than I know shitty teachers by a lot.
And I know way
we
more.
We should always hope for that.
Yeah, exactly. And I know way more shitty parents who scapegoat education because of their own deficiencies, inefficiencies, and failures to participate. What percentage do you get as a turnout for parent-teacher conferences, Woods? I mean, I know your subject area
entirely because I work with kids that have emotional behavioral disorders.
Right.
So my population is weird for that. So almost never, but like I take the worst kids the district has to offer, but that's just my little niche.
Actually, as somebody who is a parent of a child who will be starting school in the next year, I'm kind of new to the whole PTA meeting thing. What do I need to know about that?
Well, don't confuse it. PTA is Parent Teacher Association, and that's more like almost like a civic group around their schools. Parent Teacher Conferences are when educators have usually at midterm and in some districts twice a year. The opportunity is provided for parents of those students to come and speak with their teachers. Now, this was so much more common in my personal experience in seeing my mom in the 70s and 80s than the turn of the 90s. At the break of the century, holy shit, it was down 50% from 50%. Parents just didn't show up for that.
You had to, not only that, you had to be good. Otherwise, you would be fresh in your teacher's head that you're an asshole, and then you get in trouble even more. Because, you know what I'm saying? Like, the teacher was stressing out whenever that stuff would be coming up, and you were, like, cleaning the class up. Like, it was horrible. It was horrible.
Well,
you do that twice a year.
So many educators.
I don't think I have to worry about my kid getting in trouble. I'm not a religious person, but I would say I'm very blessed. My child is very, very well behaved in comparison to a lot of children his age. So I'm actually really impressed, and I'm not sure why I'm so lucky.
In front of you, right? Like you've seen your kid when it's not in front of you, in front of a bunch of kids that are.
He does act a little different when he's not in front of me, but even then, he is still very well behaved, and we have gotten multiple comments on that about his very unusually well behaved behavior.
That's awesome. So, like I would say in my class, since I do the behavior disorders in my school district, if I know the kid's name, we probably need to change something. If I didn't know your kid by the end of the year, keep going with what you're doing. Excellent job.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, kind of how the opposite of how I was when I grew up. The cops knew my name, and that wasn't a good thing.
Oh yeah, you were toast.
It was because I was a complete shit when I was a kid. I did 12 years at Catholic school. They want to tell me they got mean teachers. They don't even know. Come on, they didn't get rulers, but. The thing you would need to know, my first question is always, how well does your kid read?
He definitely does need to work on that, and I will try to assist with that.
Okay,
actually, any suggestions would be greatly.
The book you're looking for is, you got a pen, write it down?
Fuck.
Have you?
Well, this is recorded, so I guess I can come back to this.
Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons by a guy named Siegfried Engelman. And it's scripted, and it will teach the kids all the phonics sounds they would need to know. And by the end of 100 lessons, so it'll take about 15 minutes, it's scripted. You have to do, the part you do is written down, it's written in italics, and follow the script, and your kid will read at first grade level by the end of kindergarten. That will change.
What was the name of the book again?
Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons.
Okay.
and there's a big chunk in the front. You can contact me if you need to, and I could walk you through it. There's about 30 pages in the front that you have to read cover to cover, and then do exactly what it says in the book. And it's set up to where you don't have to think about how the words are set up. Like the first sounds they'll teach is the long sounds like s and ah and because those are easy for kids to say, and then they use words like that. It's all about phonics.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. I've literally given. If I had any more copies of the book, I'd get your address and send you one. But I think I've given away all the ones I had. I buy 4.
That
I'd
might
have
work.
to pay you for it anyway.
That might work for some kids, but have you tried yelling and threatening?
Shame.
That's disciplinary. That's different.
Catholic school, I learned shame and eternal damnation. I'm clear on both of those things.
I will say that actually I've had to, and this is just his age because he doesn't quite get it yet. But you know, you give your kids toy guns and stuff. We've been having a problem lately with him pointing it at people, and I've had to actually take it away for extended periods of time because of that. So
that's good parenting.
Yeah, no, because I don't want him to end up like the kids you hear on the news stories where they made a really bad decision and they ended up shot, or end up in my situation when I was a kid, which I wasn't pointing at anybody, but I was walking down the street because I was going to go hang out with a buddy, and we'd go into his backyard, shoot BB guns and shit. And well, my dumbass friend was refusing to wake up, so I just kind of hung around the area for a while, and I had a BB gun in my backpack that kind of stuck out. Just by the way my backpack was, it wasn't really a backpack, it was like a camelback, but it's weird. So I was walking in front of this house into this field area where I just decided to sit for a while, and the house that was there apparently belonged to one of the county sheriffs, and they called the local police saying I had a sawed-off shotgun in my backpack.
Oh.
And I was laying down in the field, and I heard brakes squeal just slightly, and I looked up and saw the cop car, and I tossed the fucking BB gun, and no sooner than I stood up, they had guns drawn on me. And it was a pretty interesting encounter, but I don't ever want that.
You wouldn't have a problem.
Sorry?
If there was no NFA, it wouldn't have been a problem. Just saying.
Right. But yeah, I don't ever want something like that happen to my kid. Like one day my kid told me, "Daddy, I want to be like you." And I was like, "No, you fucking don't." I don't know how I survived this long. You'll die.
Do as I do, not as I say.
Exactly.
Or do as I say, not as I do. Whoops.
One of those two, right?
Yeah. I don't have kids, so I have a certain immunity.
But no. But I definitely, yeah, I've been definitely active in trying to nip that bad habit in the bud. Hell, his birthday was the other day, and I already had given him a warning on it, and he blatantly did it again. But I had to take it away and be mean daddy about that. But it's for good reason, though. I'm getting a little personal. My apologies.
Yeah, no worries. It's Christmas, so why don't we take the rest of the show, because it is Christmas Eve. Thanks to Echo for mentioning that. I've been sitting here not even paying attention because F the ATF. I wish there was a comment period so that I could just care in their ass, right? Like, a-holes. I had other stuff to do last week, and then they started pushing us around, and I don't know, for some reason I decided I'd, work towards trying to make some awareness or whatever. So I ruined my schedule, my plans completely. And yeah, now it's catch-up time. Thankfully, I don't thank the ATF at all. I thank the people who efforted, and whatever set of circumstances came through. We get to take this breath. So I do appreciate everybody who's joined us tonight to chat about stuff. But if you're down, I don't care how long we go here, but yeah, let's take a second to, I think one of the first questions I actually asked was, what would we have done if we were still fighting right now? Like, let's not forget that, sure, we got to take a breath, but by the grace of what, right? Like coincidence, planning, effort, tactics on their end, we don't know. So with that in mind, we do get to take a breath, and it is Christmas Eve, so I don't know if anybody wants to say anything about that, but no, I don't care if you got personal. I mean, this is a show to be new or next, so there is no right or wrong, and we're not getting any feedback except for from Woods. Oh wait, no, am I reading? Yeah, it's just you guys. We're all just, it's us. I don't even know if there's no proof that anybody else is even listening to this show. But anyway, Christmas Eve, anything you want to chat about?
Well, one of the things I would have been doing is spending money that I can now divert into last-minute gifts for people instead of printing out a bunch of expensive scratch paper by reproducing that submission form for a lot of people. But I am going to go ahead and do at least a fraction of what I was hoping, and just worry about that stuff after the holidays.
It might be an interesting exercise to think about what had you planned to do. I know what I had kind of rough draft planned to do, but things kept changing. They didn't proceed as, I would have been probably doing another read of those comments, earlier today, but of course I didn't have to or didn't do it because the things changed. So thinking about, I guess, as a mental exercise, what would have happened, or would that have been effective, or what would have been the likely outcomes, and just as an exercise. I don't know if it's worth it even at all. I'm just throwing it out there as a thing to do so that we don't just have what we normally have, because we've had wins before. Because we normally have the win, we all think about, yeah, that was great, and this is what we did. That was either good or whatever. Then we start talking about a movie or the Baby Yoda show or whatever happens next. And then we never really take a second to actually really think about it. And I'm sure every successful sports team or successful entrepreneurship or whatever, looks at things. Like they take a second to look at everything and evaluate, right? So that you learn.
Oh, yeah. After Saturday Night Lights, you were in the damn room for films on Monday. That was a team activity that almost none of us wanted to have to participate in after a loss. But of course, we all wanted to be there for the ones where we were victorious. And that was even after we would have coaches breaking us down, showing us exactly, rewinding, replaying, and cajoling and cursing at us, about the slips in performance that we had on the way to what they thought would be the appropriate refinement. Not always easy to hear as a kid, though.
I'm going to get back to, I was originally got a bunch of John Lott books, and I was dissecting through them because I'm the nerd that if you make a claim, I actually go look up the claim. So it takes me about a week or two to read a book because I want to see the actual data that he's quoting.
Right on.
So you pulled all that stuff out, you mean?
Yeah, I have a whole file. I take a bunch of Post-it notes, and I'll make notes, and then eventually I'll go through those Post-it notes and look up the actual articles. He's really good about citing at the end of so you can just cite it and go, okay, and then I'll make a note of, I verified it. Because when you're reading research, you have to verify that they actually quoted what they said they quoted. I believe John Lott, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to use my scientific rigor. I was trained on how to do that, so I might as well do it.
Well, and you can also learn more, right? I'm assuming the reason you do that is because somebody says, oh, well, in this case, it was made clear that blah, blah, blah. And then you go look at that case, and it was like 12 to 13 vote or something. And it's like, well, it wasn't really clear as much as just happened to turn out this way. Yeah.
Well, and also if John Lott quotes the researcher, then I want to know more about that researcher. Because chances are it's a really good bunch of research, and it's all there in the book for me. Or if other authors. So then I go read their books.
Well, I was thinking Christmas to talk about on Christmas. I got a new challenge this year where the one kid or this one people are on the team here in Tucson. One of the 3 guys that started gun websites with me, their kids are girls, and they're like not in, what would they be? I don't know. They're young girls. They're not in like high school yet for sure. They can read. What?
Didn't you buy them like bows or something?
No, I wanted to buy the older one a bow because I think she could handle it. But then the other one, the one rides a tricycle, the other one rides a bicycle with training wheels still. So however old that is, right? Anyway, they had a trampoline that I don't know where they got a trampoline, but they had a trampoline and then something happened, like the wind took it or I don't know, something happened. They don't have a trampoline anymore. And it must bother them. So on Christmas, they're getting a trampoline. Hopefully not listening to this. There's no way they're listening to this, probably. If they are, then I'm spoiling. But anyway, they're going to, while they're opening their crap on Christmas, we're going to sneak in and build the trampoline in the backyard again. So that's the first time I've done that for a little kid. I think that should be interesting to see a little kid. Imagine little kids out there, a couple little sisters, going to be doing their presents and shit. And I'm hoping they're going to be like, go look in the backyard to let the dog, whatever, make them go in the backyard and just to verify, like, backyard's still empty. And then the goal is while they're in there wailing on their presents, which should take a while, of course, for two girls, I can't imagine. I don't know how they actually do it, but I don't know. Do they make people? They make people do it one at a time usually, right? Like even if there's a bunch of kids, like everybody's got to watch everything. So it could take a while, right? Huh?
Don't you just tell your buddy, hey, make sure that they open them one at a time so we need a minute to put this together?
Oh, I'm taking orders, dude. It ain't my Christmas. I'm just there to do it. But anyway, that's interesting. So we're going to sneak in while they're doing the Christmas presents, build in the backyard, get the hell out of there so that then they can go outside and there's a magical trampoline in the backyard again. So that sounds fun. Plus there's lots of fun to this. That should be pretty fun. Like I said, it's the first time I've done anything like that. I mean, I've bought a kid a present before, but that's about it. Never I never even knew anybody that like put a bicycle together for the kid or something, so that there was something more to it. Did you guys ever get like a train set up? Like that was a thing back in the day. Is like if you got something cool, like a train set, like some parents would put it together and stuff. So it's not like here's a box of shit you can go put together, but instead like here it is.
My grandfather used to actually put together, because he had a pool table in the living room. He would put down a whole like setup for like a town with multiple different trains, like the realistic looking ones. Some of them were old as fuck. Some of them were kind of new. One year I got a McDonald's train that was modeled off one of the newer, I don't know what kind of model, but diesel style trains, I guess. And that was really fucking awesome. Like we just had different lines running all over the plywood we had on the pool table.
What scale was it?
Just for portions of the time, like not all the time, right?
Well, they were all the same portions, but I don't remember what scale it was.
Christmas, though, not like all year round.
Oh, no, it was only at Christmas.
Was the engine like the size of your forearm roughly, or was the engine more so, like the size of your middle finger? Or somewhere
the engine was more the size of my forearm, I'd say.
As O scale, then?
Why don't you build the size of the track? What about the size of the track? What about the size of the track? Like the trains I had, the track was about the size of a Hot Wheel, like the far part is a Hot Wheel.
The tracks we had were, they had 3 rails on it. One was for contact with the electricity. The others were just for the wheels. But
yeah, that would have been O scale.
Okay, I'll take your wisdom on that because I have long since forgotten what the fuck it was. I was interested in it when I was like 9 through 13, and then I'm just like, I found guns.
So when they're bigger, is it just bigger, or does it mean like there's more detail in?
It all depends on what you get. Part of it depends on when it was made, stuff like that. You can get some marked stuff, the old tin stuff that it isn't going to have a whole lot of detail. It's more collectible because a lot of that was pre-war, whatnot, and even then, it doesn't. The mark stuff, there's some value with some of it. Other stuff, not so much. But then, like I've got some HO scale Riverossi, which the HO stuff is probably what you're talking about, G. Being where the track is about as wide as a Hot Wheel track. And like the Riverossi HO stuff, very detailed. It looks like there's passengers inside the car sometimes, stuff like that. Likewise, I've got O scale stuff that, is very blasé. It's there, you have it, it runs, but, so it really depends on
Well,
how much
'cause
money you want to spend at each level.
even that really big scale, they would be for like in a auditorium or like in some kind of display where you're like 75 feet away from it. So it never needed to be super fancy. It just needed to be a train moving around amongst a whole bunch of other stuff. So there would be, I imagine, like a variety of like if this is going to be yours and you're going to look at it like a specimen or a collector's item versus like what I'm describing, something that's just part of a bigger thing. And it's not.
Well, and at the scale that barbecue's talking about with those larger ones, you can actually, even though you could do it with the tiny ones too, but you can like outfit the cars that, ones that don't just have decals or painted effects on each side, but like say a passenger car in a train setup, and you could have little people and little porters and little suitcases and all that other kind of scale stuff. It's crazy.
I mean, it's not quite. It's like Star Wars figure size, right? It's pretty big.
If you're gonna get that big, I think you probably have to be going up to G scale at that point.
Well, okay, train nerd, but I'm just saying
It'd be in between like the scales. So when you buy a Matchbox car, it'd be like in between the ones I had, at least. I don't know, but the ones we had were in between. If you had a Matchbox car and one of those pharmacy cars you buy, that's probably about the size of your hand. Like you go to CVS, they have the little PDQ that's got a whole bunch of like classic cars or ambulances, etc. on it that are all about the size of your hand. So it'd be in between that size, like dead in the middle.
Well, that's like 1/64th or 1/32nd to 1/16th scale. Is the difference you're talking
dealing
about?
With fractions here, and I'm not good at fractions.
Well, shit, I can't convert them for you, but. But barbecue, help us understand.
Well, with Cobalt,
speak
I already know
wisdom.
Cobalt was talking about O scale, which is probably one of the most common other than HO. G scale gets very large. Trying to think of something to compare that to. Honestly, some G scale trains, if you I'm trying to think something to compare it to. G scale is about as big as it gets. Then they go down from there, which then
looks like they're about this almost the size of a shoebox. The cars.
G scale, probably a little bit bigger, honestly.
So something you have to set up in the backyard.
Yeah, this one they got a G
No,
scale.
you can definitely set it up in the house still. You just have to have
it's the one
a very large area dedicated in your house to it.
It's the one. It's the one from the beginning of Mr. Rogers.
Oh man, it's been so long since I've seen Mr. Rogers. I can't say for sure.
Neighbor.
I don't remember what, because I just remember the trolley and everything, but I don't have a clue.
Every once in a while, when he was going to Fantasyland or whatever, he would have this train come in, if I remember right, and then the train would leave him, and it would come out in Fantasyland. That's how he would travel to Fantasyland.
The land of make believe.
Or am I wrong? I think it was a train. It might have been that trolley.
No, you're right. It was the trolley's name was Trolley. And
it was just
Trolley.
like, oh, I've got a train that comes out of one side of my closet and comes into this other side of my closet, and there's no other part of the train. Don't worry about it. Like, all right, no problem. You have a train that goes one way from the left side of your closet to the other side. Nobody's questioning that. All right.
But why is it the closet though?
Yeah, well, we're talking about.
It wasn't really a closet. It was the area of his wall or something. I forget. It was just like behind his couch. This train would come by. But that's how big this thing was. It was. I don't know. Like if you were going to have one that would move stuff around your house, like food and stuff, that's the size you'd want.
Yeah. Shoebox was a good comparison.
Yeah.
Well, it's bigger. I'm looking at it like, say, somebody has one in their backyard, and you can just see it on some bricks. So I was trying to. It's bigger than bricks, basically. Way bigger than bricks. Actually.
I was talking about Trolley.
Oh no, yeah, I don't. That
Mr.
one.
Rogers. So, sorry, I don't mean to derail anything, but barbecue. So, what are the size of the ones that people did used to say? I see them in pictures from the 40s and 50s where people would have something that was big enough for, an adult to sit on the engine. And these were, fuel powered trains. And then they would have like the cars behind them, like a kid could sit in, like almost as like the size of a small red wagon almost.
Those ones, I'm not 100% sure what those are, if they even had their own scale or anything, or if that was just more so like like a Power Wheels Jeep type deal, where it was, you don't go out and buy a Power Wheels Jeep and be like, oh, well, this is whatever scale. It's a Power Wheels Jeep,
Okay.
So those I don't know, and they're like right now I'm just talking about O, H, O, N scale, and we got into G a little bit here, but there's so many other little scales. Like there is one, I think it was called TT or something like that. I had seen a diagram of all the different scales, and there is literally one scale that, because you also have something called Z scale, which is, you would think, really tiny, which it is, but there's a scale tinier than that, and like I said, I think it's called TT if I remember correctly, but like it's small, like the engines are smaller than a penny.
So
I mean,
TT for tiny train, tiny track.
possibly.
Are those the ones that people make the models of like whole like regions with, and they put it on display?
No, people typically do that with your O scale, HO, and N scale. N scale's nice because you can make a pretty decent layout on something as small as a coffee table. HO is nice because it's very cost effective, and you still get a ton of room with it. HO would be equivalent probably to the model cars, that you would, say fit in your hand. Then, but there's plenty of people that do layouts with O scale still. But with that, it's going to depend partly on how elaborate you want your layout. I've seen people that will do 4x8 sheet of plywood and do an entire layout on that with O scale still. Now they're not doing a whole lot as far as track and whatnot. It's probably going to be an oval or possibly a figure eight or something, and they're just gonna have the landscape laid out, stuff like that. There's, like I said, when you're
That's
doing,
what we had.
yeah, when you're doing O scale at that level or on that size, it kind of limits you. But I mean, you still have a lot of options where you can have road crossings and trees and buildings. You still got a lot of option there. But
well, with your TT scale one, I'm thinking is in Denton we had this one building that the entire building was kind of dedicated. It wasn't like a big thing, probably about the size of a 2-bedroom apartment, but standard 2-bedroom apartment. And they had a whole layout. It had mountains, all sorts of shit that the trains would run along, run through, etc. That's what I'm thinking when you say the TT scale.
Well, let's say you could even do that with HO or N scale very easily. And again, I mean, you could do that in a a guest bedroom or something. A 8x8, 10x10 bedroom. I mean, you could do a whole lot of detail like that with O gauge still. But when you take it down to HO or N, It just the size difference there really opens up the options. One, because the track isn't nearly as large. You can probably, for one piece of O gauge track, you could probably stick two pieces of HO track side by side inside of that O gauge track. And N scale track, you could probably fit maybe four pieces side by side inside that O gauge track to try, kind of give a reference on how much track is actually going to be taking up. So as far as putting in switches and different things and turntables and all that good stuff, if you really wanted to, you get a lot more options in a smaller confined space. Like I said, people will take and make a pretty decent layout on something as small as a coffee table with N scale. And then when you're talking about doing that same thing with O gauge, you really need a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
I've been looking at a site I found where I was typing in there rideable trains, and I found backyard trains, they call them. It sounds like. So people that are enthusiasts of putting a train in their backyard, they just call them backyard trains. And then it looks like they're all over the gambit from anything you can think of, as you can kind of assume or imagine. And then I found this site as I was wandering around, and it looks like a place that sells all kinds of amusement park stuff. And then the train segment of that website has, I don't think there's too many of them that are the same. A couple of them look like they might be, but it's some sort of site that really won't let me look at anything until I log in. And so now it's not even letting me look at like the first page of these things or anything. But most of them look like they're something that, well, they might be variations or some model that, they're buying from somewhere, but because they could just be different paint jobs or something. But they're trackless trains, so they're basically just some kind of a little tractor with things they're pulling around, and they're calling it a train. But there's really only a couple in here that are tracked trains, and they're not consistent. So are those big ones maybe just made to order or something? I mean, there is this place called backyardtrains.com that does make them, but it seems new, like for people that are just rich and want them in their backyards. Is it possible that all the old ones were just somebody that had the investment and decided to make one? Maybe that was half their pleasure, was just making the thing in the first place?
I think so, because I've heard of people just going and doing that. They'll take and build their own track and train and whatnot. Part of that is, one, you got to obviously be very good with your hands and fabricating things. Like I've seen things like that. I actually just saw one on Facebook a week ago or so. It was freaking awesome though. And by the looks of it,
do you think that it's possible to get training to build trains?
I have no idea. I'd imagine so.
I'm a dip out, guys.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in.
See ya.
Absolutely. Go easy,
Yeah.
man.
3 hours, it's Christmas Eve, and now we're talking about trains at a level that is dropping people like flies. So I think that we're going to take that as a sign that Christmas won't happen if we talk about trains too much longer. Everyone's dropping out of here on the outside. And this show is motivated by fame and fortune, and that's it. And you can't have the fortune part without the fame, and fame means nothing if you're not richer than everybody that you can lord it over. So yeah, if those two goals aren't being met, this show ends immediately. I don't care if it's 3.5 hours into it or not, and if it's a big train conversation, no matter. This losing money, we're losing money. So I don't know. Does anybody want to say anything before we head out? As always, I'll just end it like I usually do. Some awesome one.
If you're, getting together with friends and family tomorrow, co-workers, whatever the heck, and you're going to be drinking or anything, please do so responsibly. If you're, sloshed or anything like that, call an Uber, get yourself a DD, a cab, whatever it is. Just be safe.
Absolutely, I second that, and safe and happy
Amen.
travels to all those that must grab some of the roadways, the highways, and the byways. Not only celebrate safe, but come home the same way.
They just keep fighting the good fight on the 2A front. Every little bit helps, and eventually we might get to a spot where it's not so contentious. I mean, the fight's never over, but we can at least push the odds in our favor and be on the defensive in a good way, not in a bad way. So.
Oh, certainly. I definitely agree. And I think we got all the reason to be optimistic. We just had a success of people getting together and a success in diversity of thought and the ability to get it across to our employees, right? And at a time when they brought it on us over Christmas. So there's no way they can act innocent. There's no way they can say this was a reaction to some horrible thing that you people caused, right? They're talking to us. Like, they have to own the fact that they decided to throw it at us over Christmas and whatever the consequences of that are. But they're doing that to us at a time when we get to now enjoy our holiday and appreciate if you're out there with your family. Not everybody gets to do that this year, at least. And then we get to gather again and consolidate and then go, well, now let's talk about why you decided to do that. So yeah, we've got a lot of potential going into the next year. I guess I was saying that we've got the potential of us getting together and doing something at a time when they have all the other things. And I don't know if I start naming them, right? International stuff, the economy, healthcare, all kinds of stuff. Like, they got so many things to worry about, even if they're super ambitious to come after our rights and what's protected by the Second Amendment. They've got to do it in and around all their other issues that they also care so much about. And we can use it, all these different things as an angle for our side to encourage them to work and then to be as effective, and also encourage them to work at a time when we are going to be as effective as possible, but then also at a time when they can devote almost the worst case scenario for them. Like, they have nothing going for them at all. Of course, they'll engineer and exploit, but aside from that, they got nothing going for them. So we've got all kinds of potential. So I don't think that anymore at all. I don't think we're the only ones, certainly not the 4 people in here, or even the 8 people that are watching right now. We're not the only ones that realize that. So I think, we're going to have a lot of fun. Everybody's going to have an enjoyable Christmas and whatnot. And then I suspect a bunch of people are going to come back, roll up their sleeves, spit in their palms of their hands, rub them together, and get ready to start retaliating a little bit, effectively using the mechanisms to push back at the bureaucracy and those individuals who hadn't been positioned officially, but are now just acting as positions of authority in the executive branch, delegating and using their what powers they have issued to them in a way to almost create laws. So there's going to be consequences to that. Yeah, it'd be awesome. All right, with all that, thanks to everybody for jumping in. Merry Christmas and happy